Everybody, welcome. Hi, hello. Welcome to Lorebeards and Roleplaying.
Oh, hi. Hello. Welcome, everyone.
Hey.
Lorebeards are role playing today. Vera, you were at Offkai, weren't you?
I was at Offkai. I hung out with Sotek. I got very sick. It was great. It was awesome. Excuse me for my absence. I was with convalescing and away in a hotel room. Wow, whoa.
You know, for people who don't know, when you go to a convention of basically any kind, but most often like fan conventions, there is a thing called con crud.
Yeah.
That happens, but there's also COVID, so the two are not necessarily the same, but you can get both.
So I actually have my COVID test with me right now, and we're gonna do a cool experiment where I find out live if I have COVID. That'll be the peak of the show. I know we're all very hyped for this.
Absolutely peak cinema.
Oh yeah.
No, but for real, for people out there who are listening to us who are going to fan conventions, make sure to wash your hands a lot. Little hand sanitizer doesn't hurt, and just be prepared that, you know, sometime within 48, 72 hours of you coming home, you might start feeling real bad. And that's the con crud or the yuck, or there's a lot of names for it.
None of them are great. It's a heck of a thing. I'm enduring. I'm being brave. I've got a big stream tomorrow, so I gotta heal. I gotta be strong.
You can do it. I believe in you.
Rah, rah.
So let's introduce ourselves. Who are you, Vera?
I'm Vera Samilla, the ill. I am a writer for the Warhammer RPGs. I stream stuff. I make video games. I do lots of stuff.
If you wanted to wish a rapper to do well, would you wish him ill? Would you want him to do ill?
You'd wish him like, I want to say Illin, like Illin, kind of like that. I'm not sure. It depends.
That's a good question. So I am Ross Watson. I am a game designer and author. I've worked on over 100 different role-playing game products, including Birthright 3rd Edition, which was a fan-made project to bring Birthright into 3rd Edition D&D. That project was unfortunately abandoned a long time ago, and I wouldn't be surprised if nobody's ever seen it. But if you did, I worked on it. Birthright is one of my absolute favorite settings in all of D&D, and I am so excited that you're here, Vera, to learn about it with me. So
yeah, it's a campaign setting that I have been intrigued by for a long little while. I like political gameplay. I think it's cool. I'm intrigued by Kingmaker and so on. I have had my eye on it for some time, but don't know a lot.
Well, I think it gets unfairly maligned as the role-playing game setting where you are like kings and princes and barons and counts. That is part of it, but that is definitely not the whole of it. So grab your seat at the table, because we're diving into one of the most criminally overlooked settings in D&D history. A world so forgotten that the Wizards of the Coast left it out of their own 30-year anniversary retrospective. Yes, this is the true redheaded stepchild of D&D settings, is Birthright.
Heck yeah.
All right, Vera, I'm going to paint a picture in your mind.
Okay.
Picture Game of Thrones colliding head-on with Highlander. Low magic, brutal political intrigue, a shattered empire clawing itself apart, and bloodlines that are literally magically transferable through combat. If you kill the right rival, their divine power becomes yours.
Pretty cool.
No other setting really does Regency and ruling like Birthright, but that's not what it's all about, because Birthright does also give us some of the strangest, most memorable monsters and kingdoms in the game's history. The regions of the world are steeped in very real historical cultures, or at least they're influenced by very real historical cultures. It has elves that feel genuinely alien and openly hostile to humanity rather than aloof forest hippies.
Hey.
And it's got a thing called the Shadow World, which bleeds Feywild and abyssal horror right into each other and is kind of overlies the whole material plane of Birthright. It's super cool. And let's do our part to make sure that this setting is forgotten no longer. Let's dig into Birthrights. Oh, God.
Yeah, it's a strong pitch, right?
We got Avani DK. Avani DK, of course, his name is one of the names of the goddesses in the setting. And I know he's a fan, so he's super excited, as well as I am.
Heck yeah.
Okay, I kind of want to like dive into like I think the coolest things are, but I could also talk about like how it has been forgotten and sidelined. Like, what would you prefer to hear about first?
We could do like a macro overview, maybe just like the history of how the setting was developed and then sort of faded away. And we could also talk about our membership super chat from Cole Patterson.
Oh yeah, hey, check that out, Cole Patterson. Thank you for being a member. Thoughts on the Gen Con D&D announcements? Dark Sun.
Yeah. D&D's getting hardcore again.
I'm interested to see what the D&D Star Wars collab is going to be. And there's actually, I had this conversation with a friend of mine recently, is that the 5e explorations of campaign settings haven't been as robust as I would like, but they are still a nice sized book that gives you a really good idea of what the setting is. So for people who don't know what Dark Sun is, I'm excited to see them get their first taste of it. And we need to cover Dark Sun because that is a fascinating setting with a great development history. It was made for a miniature game. Did you know that?
I did not know that. I knew there was a box set.
Yeah, see, I used to work for Tim Brown at Ulysses Spiel. And Timothy Brown is the designer of Dark Sun. He is the guy who made it happen. And he told me all the stories about it. Actually, you know what? We should get him on as a guest to talk about Dark Sun. That would be rad.
Oh, that'd be great. Yeah, it is the Dark Sun era.
That would be rad. Yeah. Dark Sun is wild, and we should talk about it. But that's my thoughts on the D&D announcements. Is there anything you wanted to add, or?
Just that I'm super glad we're getting a 18 plus setting for D&D. I think the one thing that I kind of mourned in the modern era of Wizards development is that the aesthetic had shifted to something a little more cuddly in a lot of ways. And I like grotesque stuff. I like grim, perilous, violent settings. I think it is going to be a nice change of pace. It has me quite excited, actually.
Awesome. And Necromancer Kobold has a question. Do you want to read this one, or shall I?
I can. Hey, Kobold, thank you so much for the super chat. Does it have any mechanics to the pretzel family tree? How Habsburg can we get?
So bloodlines and dynasties are very, very important in Birthright, and we will discuss why that is. There isn't really like a long history of interbreeding in Birthright, but it does become a lot of some of the political scheming and machinations are to get two strong bloodlines together to continue that bloodline and give it because the stronger your bloodline, the more able you are to manage your realm. But again, that is not the main thing. It is a thing about Birthright. And I think a lot of people get lost and they're like, oh, I don't want to be playing a king. I want to do adventuring stuff. Yeah, trust me. Birthright's full of cool adventuring stuff.
Yeah, it's Highlander.
Well, Highlander's part of it, which I'm excited to talk about too. All right, so you said you wanted which included a Atlas of Cerealia, which is the history of the geography. It had a rule book with all of the ways to make your characters and everything. It had a Ruins of Empire book, which was the settings kingdoms. Plus, the design of 1996 is not up to the standards we have today for mass combat rules. It only lasted for about 4 years, but there were 25 role-playing supplements and 5 tie-in novels, although a 6th novel was released just for the Forgotten Realms instead. Remember that. We will come back to that too. It was ported to 3rd edition by a fan project called the Birthright Campaign Setting BRCS on birthright.net. If you are at all curious about Birthright, that is the home of Birthright fans, is birthright.net. But you want to hear about what makes it distinct, right?
Yeah.
So Birthright was the first D&D product to support player characters as rulers. It had diplomacy, politics, trade, construction, war. It had all those elements in it. You could rule a kingdom or a merchant guild or a temple, even a network of magical ley lines. If you were a wizard, you could have and exert influence on a much larger scale than as a typical adventurer. Okay.
Yeah, and like this is sort of a natural evolution of some of the OG Greyhawks structures, just because amassing golden wealth over time, having your big caravan of servants and assistants, you need somewhere to put it.
Well, I mean, the base rules did not deviate much from second edition, Advanced Edition Dragons. It was mostly thematic changes and things like that. So in Birthright, you have characters that fall into basically three categories. Either you are an unblooded, what is called an unblooded adventurer, which is kind of like a commoner. Blooded scions who carry divine heritage but don't rule anything, which these are kind of slightly more super heroic adventurers, because the divine bloodline gives you some cool abilities that are on top of your class and your race. And then there are regents. The regents are the blooded scions who actually hold and govern a domain. And the game was set up to where you could go adventure during like the summer and the fall, and then you'd come home, and in the winter you would rule your realm and send out decrees and do those kinds of things. But again, you didn't have to do that. If you wanted to just adventure in Birthright, you could, and it was such a great setting for adventure, which I want to get into, but I do have to cover what bloodlines are and how Regency works. So I will get into that. Got a couple of cool super chats here. Do you want to read this one?
Yeah, of course. Exiled One, thank you for the membership for 8 months. Thank you. So you mean I could be a sorcerer king? Yeah, well, kind of.
So being second edition, it was before sorcerers, but yes, you could be a sorcerer king. And in fact, my first Birthright character ever was a blooded wizard who ruled over a number of ley lines in our region. So yes, for sure. Benjamin Frazier 6654 says Birthright seems like a cool ass setting that always fit awkwardly with the rules of D&D, but props for covering it. It deserves a revival. Hell yes, it does. 150% it does.
Yeah, it's a cool thing. It originated this style of play that I like very much. I feel like I'm the bane of some of my tables wanting to get into city building and top-down development. So it's cool to see the origins.
All right, so the backstory of the setting is that about 1,500 years before the default time, the evil god Azrai assembled an army of monsters, corrupted human tribes, and elves, this is important, to conquer the continent of Cerelia. The other gods, they mustered their forces to meet him at this climactic battle of Mount Deismar, and it was a catastrophic event for both sides. The mortal armies could not defeat Azrai outright, so the gods sacrificed their own essences to destroy him. And the divine power of all of these gods rained down onto the survivors of the battlefield. So a handful of mortals who were the closest to the conflict absorbed enough of this divine power to ascend and become the new pantheon of gods. But many more absorbed smaller fragments that manifested as some supernatural abilities and a mystical bond to the land that they would come to rule. Azrai's own essence corrupted some people into what were called Unshalian, which means blood of darkness, which are monstrous, twisted beings who possess powers and abilities beyond that of normal monsters and beings of their kind, and are warped by their evil origin. Something I need to point out about Birthright is they used a lot of Welsh names. So when I say Unshalian, it is spelled in a way that you would not at all think it's spelled. Okay. Pronunciation of things is difficult in Birthright because sometimes the way it's written, you're like, huh? The names are often very Celtic or Welsh in a lot of cases. So your bloodline strength is not fixed at birth. It can fluctuate over the course of play. Like you can succeed in politics, and that can make your bloodline stronger. You can kill another Scion and steal their bloodline for your own. That's the Highlander element of the game. You can even voluntarily transfer your bloodline to someone else during a formal ceremony of investiture in which you give up your divine right to rule and thus increase someone else's power. Priests were the only ones who could do this in the setting. So the role of temples in Birthright is actually very strong. Religion is very strong. It is not just a ceremony to say you're king. The priest is required to transfer the bloodline from one person to another.
So you can become kinglier by demonstrating your effectiveness as a ruler, either in combat or through management of your lands.
Correct.
Okay.
So there's a legit incentive to like rule well. But again, I need to get that all out of the way because I think way too many people looked at Birthright and were like, oh, that's all it is. No, that is not all it is. That is one of the things that sets it apart. But now we're going to talk about the world, because the world is effing cool, Vera. The world is so cool. Okay, so the world is called Abrinus, and it includes at least 4 continents. The main continent is called Cerealia, and this is where the majority of Birthright is set. And it is compared, it has a number of different regions that are all based on, or strongly influenced by, I should say, real world cultures. The main focus of the core box is Anweir, which is based on England and France in the 1300s to the 1500s. Some minor Scottish influences. There's a place called Brector, which is kind of like Denmark, Germany, and Netherlands during the height of the Hanseatic League. So it's a lot of swashbuckling merchant princes, where Anweir is more like your knights and your castles and your damsels and your court, right? Like that's the England and France part, where Brector is they're merrily sailing the seas and trading with everyone they can find. Then you've got the Canasi realm, which is very Arabia inspired, with some Phoenician Greek stuff mixed in as well. It's very, in Game of Thrones, this would be Dorne, right? If you're familiar with Dorne. And then there's the Reuric Highlands, which I am not shitting you. This is Skyrim before Skyrim. It is the land of Vikings. It is the land of snow and ice and mountains and giants and, crazy weather. Absolutely awesome. Lastly, you have Vosgard, which is kind of like a weird fantasy Mad Max Russia. It works. I know I'm maybe overselling it, but it works. You got these top-knotted, bare-chested barbarians riding through snowy Siberian wastes on top of furry lizards that they use as mounts, and it's just awesome.
Nice.
The elves have a very heavily Irish cultural flavor. In fact, they call themselves the Shaleen, which is, the she of Irish myth. The dwarves are, again, very fairly Welsh. The halflings have a weird kind of magical hobbit characterization because they originally came from the Shadow World, and they can even see into it and transport themselves through it for short-range teleports and things like that. The Shadow World is, as I said, this Feywild-like realm that overlays reality, but there is a being that has been corrupting it, turning it dark and full of undead hordes, and has become a fearsome place. And that being is called the Cold Rider. And everyone suspects that is the majority of Azrai's essence, the god of evil who died and was destroyed, that it has recoalesced there in the Shadow World.
Pretty cool thematic range. I mean, I get almost hints of like Elric, like there was an Arabian inspired realm in Melniboné, part of the first book. We're going to make some classic inspirations here.
Ivani says, best of all, no gnomes. Well,
we like gnomes.
I got to be honest with you, Ivani. When I read Birthright, gnomes are fine. Dragonborn are fine. There's ways to bring them in. But yes, in the base game, there were no gnomes.
Well, dragons are rare in this setting too, right?
There's only like a dozen of them. Yeah, they are rare but incredibly powerful and stupidly strong. When a dragon is sighted in Birthright, this is a holy shit, evacuate the city kind of moment. And we're going to get into how magic is seen, because it is a generally low magic setting. Not unlike Game of Thrones. You're going to hear me make this comparison a few times. I will explain why. Cole Patterson has a super chat here. Do you want to read this one?
Yeah, also thoughts on D&D's other dead setting, Mystara.
Okay, Mystara is not nearly as dead as Birthright. It was in the 30 Years of Adventure book, for example. Also known as the Known World, Mystara was the setting for D&D's basic D&D set. Caves of Chaos, the Keeping the Borderlands, all that stuff is set in the known world, or what would become called Mystara.
Yeah, Mystara had the Hollow Planet, right? Which I've always found kind of interesting.
It had a Hollow World. Mystara is kind of... I'm actually using Mystara for my current D&D game that I just started up last week.
Oh, yeah.
And it's got a place called the Savage Coast where there's pirates and gunpowder and gunslingers. It's got a kingdom called Glantry, which is just like your full-on sorcerer kingdom with all kinds of weird stuff, tieflings and crazy monsters come out of that place. And my favorite sub-setting of it is Thunder Rift, which is kind of more Mystara adjacent because it's a little valley that's kind of off on its own, but it's fairly close to Karamikos in Mystara. But anyway, Thunder Rift is awesome. Also written by Colin McComb. Go check that out sometime. Yeah, Benjamin Fraser, it's like 5 unrelated nested settings. A ton of them.
There's some cool ideas there, though. I've always been a fan of the Hollow World.
Ivani says, I kid, gnomes were not a player race as they had no kingdoms. However, they were on the list of monsters in the monster manual you could use in Birthright. Yeah, there was no gnome kingdoms on the map. That doesn't mean they didn't exist. Actually, one of the fun things about Birthright is that a lot of the world was not fully defined. We know a lot about one continent out of 4, which leaves a lot of room for exploration. Yeah, Kislev, Bretonia, the Empire, Erbi, and Norska. Yeah, Benjamin Fraser. It's not that far off from the old world in some ways. It's got a little more of a Game of Thrones feel to it, and and a little more D&D feel to it. So that's why. Necromancer Kobold, would you like to read this one?
Yeah, thank you so much, Kobold, for the super chat. I need this setting back for no other reason, but this seems like the only setting with the mechanics for me to play a proper necromancer. Well, yeah, you could use your regency to command an undead kingdom, I suppose.
Speaking of that, let's talk about how magic works in Birthright.
Yeah, because the regency itself is divine, right?
It is, and Birthright said, okay, there's 2 types of magic. There's lesser magic and true magic. Lesser magic was considered basically spells from level 1 to 3 and illusions. Okay. That was what's called lesser magic. But if you wanted to cast spells, like actual real spells, you had to be capable of casting true magic. Now that's any magic of any school from 4th level and above. And it included a special type of magic called realm magic that was only available to regents. And you could spend your regency to cast spells on an entire region of the map, which is really cool. There's also another. They had mass combat rules, which I saw somebody was asking about. Necromancer was saying it had mass unit rules. They also had what was called battle magic, where you could do a rain of magic missiles down on an entire unit on the battlefield. Only true wizards could do this stuff. So who is capable of casting true magic as opposed to lesser magic? Well, there's only 2 ways to do it. The first way, the most common way, is you have to be an elf or a half-elf. They are naturally so attuned to magic that they can just cast true magic. They are for real wizards. The second way is if you have a bloodline. So a human with a bloodline could cast true magic. A dwarf with a bloodline could cast true magic. An elf who didn't have a bloodline at all is like, yeah, well, guess what? I can still cast true magic. But what this meant it meant that wizards who were capable of casting those kinds of spells were incredibly rare. Now, again, this is only arcane magic, as Avani DK is pointing out. Divine magic is different, and there are no elf clerics, which we will get into. But for arcane casting, this meant that wizards were extremely rare. And if you went into someplace and they started talking about an old wizard up on the hill, you'd be like, oh, okay, that's someone we need to watch out for. They can actually cast like teleport. They can cast fireball. They can cast fly. They can hit us with some really dangerous stuff. If on the other hand they're like, oh, that's Bob, he's our local magician, you'd be like, oh, okay, fine. You can probably cast Phantasmal Force and maybe Prestidigitation, and that's about it, right? Now, divine magic, as he's pointed out, is different. All clerics were considered, full casters, and they could do all this. They could do all the things. They could do battle magic. They could do realm magic. They could do standard magic, just as normal. However, go ahead.
Well, as you said, priests are important in this setting too.
They are, and the power of a state religion is actually pretty great in Birthright. Like if you were the ruler of a barony and you were like, well, in this barony we all decide to worship Kurikan, the god of storm and war, and the local priest is of that temple, he'd be like, great, fantastic. Now I get to be in charge of all the ceremonies and shit.
Yeah, okay. So there's like war between the gods almost. They're trying to have their own primacy in the different states that are emerging.
Well, it can be war between the gods, but it can also be war between different factions of the same church.
Perfect. Schism. We love it.
Yeah, you can have, there were plenty of that going on. Now, the other thing I would need to point out here is that the elves, specifically, to kind of counterbalance the fact that they could just all inherently do true magic on the arcane side. And this is kind of it's a really interesting bit in the lore, but the elves are so long lived in Birthright. They live for thousands of years. They're very Tolkien-esque in some ways. Mm-hmm. Because the elves had been around at Deismar, they didn't worship any gods because all the gods that existed were the humans that were the closest ones to the blast. And they're like, I knew that guy. He was kind of a prick. I'm not going to worship him. But it meant that you had a entire species that, again, this is not every elf, but by and large, culturally, they chose to be atheists. They chose to be like, when 3rd edition D&D rolled around and you didn't have to have a god to be a cleric, it was kind of a consensus among Birthright fans that you could certainly be a druid if you were an elf and nobody would care. And if you wanted to be a cleric of nature instead of a god, that was probably fine too. One of my characters was a half-elf who was an actual priest of Halen, who is the main god of Anweir, which is, again, is the main setting. So it was kind of a big deal, and people were always giving me the side eye because they're like, why are you a cleric? Anyway. Ricky Chapman, big super chat, coming to a steel chair. Thank you so much, Ricky Chapman.
Thank you.
This is the part of the show where I tell you that if you want to get more Lorebeards coming at you, the best way to support us and support the channel is to give us a super chat, because that directly impacts the hosts, and we are always grateful to everyone who chooses to support us with a super chat. Ricky Chapman is our local tabletop role-playing game enthusiast. I always like to read what he's got. He says, this sounds like a campaign we're currently playing with our fellow GMs. Carved into the mountain, our city stands strong for now, as deep in the mines a slumbering Tarrasque has been discovered, and we are planning to drown it. Nice.
I mean, suffocation beats fighting it up front, right?
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's wild. So, where was I? Yeah, talked about magic. And here's the part I need to talk about with Game of Thrones. Now, you may have heard me say some names, like Ed Stark. You have maybe heard the actual year, 1995, 1996. And Birthright, especially Anweir, is a shattered empire that's built around the remnants of a larger organization, a larger union of kingdoms, that they are all fighting over a thing called the Iron Throne. Dun, dun, dun.
Okay, all right. I see where this is going.
Now, it is well known that George R.R. Martin is a tabletop enthusiast. He has, for example, all the Wild Cards books that he wrote, that was his Super World campaign that he and his friends all played.
Uh-huh.
But the timing does not work out for one to be influenced by the other, because Game of Thrones was published in 96, and Birthright was either 95 or 96, depending on where you were. So it's impossible for one to have influenced the other. And if you ask George R. Martin about it, he's mentioned his influences, and none of them are Birthright. But there is an awful lot of parallel development and naming conventions and things like that make people go, wait a minute, are you sure that one of these didn't influence the other?
Well, I mean, Birthright was out by the time you wrote the second book.
True, but again, the foundation had been laid in that first book. I have debated this many times, and I've gone back and forth about it over the years. Currently, I'm sitting at the point where I just don't think the timing works out for Birthright to have been the genesis for Game of Thrones. However, Ed Stark is a friend of mine, and I have talked to him about this, and he says he remembers being on a panel with George Martin around that time. So it's a mystery for the ages. This is not an easily unsolved mystery. We'll just have to kind of put it out there as a fun fact that they seem to be the same thing, but they kind of are not, and they kind of could have influenced each other, but they probably didn't. Converging development, says Ricardo Andre, like convergent evolution.
Yeah, like the simultaneous discovery of calculus, right?
Yeah.
But for kingdom management.
It's just a lot of coincidences, but it's just fan speculation. But I wanted to make sure to get it out there because I knew people would be starting to put together the dots like I have over the years and say, wait a minute, what's going on here?
Like, some of it could be tendency at the time, right? Because there was definitely this interest in fleshing out characters and having deeper backstories and more presence in the setting, and fantasy sort of shifted that way.
Who knows? Benjamin Fraser says that George Martin knows better than to acknowledge anything that smells like liability. Woo! Cynical, but I mean, definitely not out of the realm of possibility.
He is a pro. All
right, so why is Birthright so overlooked? Why is it considered the redheaded stepchild? I mean, part of me thinks that there's a lot of reasons here, but first of all, it was canceled. Birthright was canceled due to low sales. And the experts all tend to agree that this was not because it was a bad setting, but because TSR at the time in the 1990s, they released so many settings simultaneously. They had Mastika and Spelljammer and Forgotten Realms and Greyhawk and Birthright, and I mean, just there was a lot of them. And Mashara, I mean, not for nothing. And also, it was also very unlucky timing because it launched right at the height of the saturation, right before the things got really rough for TSR, and Wizards of the Coast would come along to buy them just a few years later. So it may have gotten lost in the transition because Wizards of the Coast, unfortunately, has just never really supported Birthright. In the modern day, Wizards has basically abandoned this setting with next to zero prospect of ever coming back to the limelight, which is a shameful thing for me. And at the time of this episode, which is the 3rd of August, 2026, there's been no announcements, including at Gen Con, for anything new for Birthright. Which means there has been nearly total silence from the publisher for decades. I mean, we're talking 30 years as of this year. Dun, dun. Richard Baker is the original co-designer. He wrote a 50th anniversary retrospective post, and he said that there was no official institutional attention in that time period. WotC did release all the old Birthright products for free in 2005, including things that never made it to print, like the Book of Regency. And that was, people were excited about that, but that's an archival gesture. That's not really ongoing support. I think that is a very far thing from ongoing support. And the neglect, it was nice. I'm not going to lie. 22 years ago, it was like, hey, and I thought maybe that meant something would happen. Of course, I've been wrong. The neglect is so consistent that fans express genuine surprise on the rare occasions that Birthright surfaces at all. For example, it was in a D&D Beyond survey as one of the options for a setting, and people were just shocked that it was even in the survey to begin with. They didn't see that, people didn't expect it to be referenced at all. So it has definitely been forgotten within the official channels, and even the dedicated communities which is, Birthright.net. I think there's a Reddit D&D Birthright as well. And those groups and fans like myself, we all tend to treat it as if it's an independent thing because it has been left fallow for so long. But the sources that talk about Birthright's neglect, it's really not about its quality. It's frequently praised as ambitious and influential despite its obscurity. And I can say with some authority, as a game designer with over 100 credits to my name, Birthright has influenced me deeply. So many things I have written have been me thinking about things I've wanted to do with Birthright. So absolutely agree on that one. Richard Baker says it very much likely influenced the Kingmaker adventure path for Pathfinder.
Oh, for sure. Which is like I think the best known rulership sim. It's part of the D&D oeuvre, kind of. Like Kingmaker is huge. It's got its own game recently. It's definitely the best known. There's like the realms like add-on system for D6s to just attach this kind of play to your campaign, but Kingmaker is the one people know.
I love Kingmaker. I love the video game. I love the adventure path. I've never actually played it at a table, but I've always wanted to.
Like now, Birthright kind of got subsumed into Spelljammer, right?
No.
Legacy-wise, yeah, because you can visit there in Spelljammer, and like it's a footnote in the Planeswalker books.
There you go. That's unfortunately that's the most we've been given for it. Right?
Oh, it's brutal. I was on the Spelljammer wiki the other day, and like it says Abernus is considered a backwater world without any sites of interest. Like it's harsh, man.
My boy, look at what they've done to my boy. Yeah, for real, I am the biggest Birthright fan you'll ever probably meet. Maybe Ivani DK can join me in that Twitter circle of champions, but yeah, it is a system that I will constantly champion, constantly defend, and constantly recommend to people who are interested in something different from the Forgotten Realms, and which has a lot of really interesting real world flavor to it. We got some interesting comments here. Morning Cresta says, I think ultimately it was ahead of its time. Quite possibly. It did run afoul of bad timing for sure. Ricardo says, Ricardo Andre asks, are we even sure that Hasbro's aware that they own the rights to it at this point? I bet the brand managers are. I don't know if anybody outside of that has ever thought about it in a long time. Morning Cresta says it didn't age well for one. It didn't lend to dungeon crawling, and low magic settings were just less popular. Unfortunately true.
Mm-hmm.
But it does, I have ran many campaigns in Birthright. You can certainly dungeon crawl. It is lacking adventure support for that. But if you are a DM who loves to homebrew a dungeon, my God, are there really cool places to dungeon crawl. So one of my favorite places is called Moriad. Moriad is a realm on the edge, what's called the Gorgon's territory. The Gorgon is the big bad of the setting. He is the Black Prince who 1,500 years ago almost became a god, but not quite, and instead became one of those on Shalian, a Blood of Darkness being called the Gorgon. He's a massive minotaur, world-ending minotaur, basically, who commands, like Sauron, vassal realms full of goblins and sworn humans and things like that under his command. So on the border of this, between the Gorgon's realm and Weir, lies Moriad. Moriad is very Scottish coded, and it even has its own Minas Tirith, like the capital of Moriad is basically Minas Tirith, and the whole flavor of Moriad is, we are the rock upon which the Gorgon shall break. We will be the anvil. And it is just so awesome. It's very coded for Lord of the Rings, but in a more Scottish way with a lot of D&D flavor sprinkled in. And I don't know why it's a slightly different recipe. It's a slightly different recipe of Tolkien, but for me, like, this is the finest cuisine of Tolkien. Of Tolkien's influence. There's also the Sealwoad, which stands for the Shieldwood, which is an elven realm that stands next to Moria. It is also bordering the Gorgon's realm. In fact, borders a majority of evil realms. And the Sealwood is it's ruled by Queen Isali, who is she's the Emerald Queen, and the Sealwood is supposed to be a realm of such fey beauty that it can literally kill unprepared humans to witness it. It will just cause such an ache in your heart that your body will break down and you will just die because it's that beautiful.
Is the reason the elves are so hateful that they're sandwiched between every evil faction?
No, that's not true. No, the elves are. It's a complicated story, but I'm happy you asked because I really want to get into it. But we do have a couple of super chats to read first. So whet your appetites. We're going to talk about elves and Birthright, and oh boy, get ready for some Uncle Ross story time. Squid Tugboat, love that name. Would you like to read this one?
Yeah, Squid Tugboat, big fan also. I love Squid. Considering that Universes Beyond is being brought to D&D, it's possible we get Game of Thrones as a setting before Birthright comes back. Sigh.
Very possible. Very possible. Cole Patterson says, I like having an interconnected D&D multiverse. Any interesting ways I could reference something from Abrinus in my Faerun campaign? That makes sense. Yes, plenty of things. There is a special metal found only on Abrinus called Timevril, which means true silver. Timevril weapons, the special thing about them is they absorb more bloodline than anything else when you kill a blooded opponent with it. Timevril weapons are the top rank stuff in Birthright to wield, and they are, well, they're formed out of ore that was exposed to the divine rain of blood from the battle at Deismar, and also there have been veins of it that have cropped up mysteriously throughout the rest of the world. So if you wanted to have something cool, you could maybe talk about a Timevril weapon. You could also talk about there's actually gemstones that are like collected divine essence that becomes a bloodline, a blood power, if you will, blood gems. There's a lot of interesting little things and people. You could have artifacts from the Shadow World, like a corrupted Fey book, or I don't know, like pick something that would be Feywild and then make it like evil and dark and fearsome, and that would also be something you could bring over.
Well, the structure of Regency magic can make for a cool antagonist too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. If you brought somebody over who was a blooded Scion and found that he could connect to Faerun, oh man, yeah,
that's a great bad guy.
Woo, that's Vera. This is why I love having you as my co-host. You have a much better mind for this stuff than me.
I get okay ideas sometimes, once in a while.
Morning to Krista says they could have woven it into Ravenloft for the lengths people are willing to go for power, with the trap figure being a genius loci of the land itself, constantly being struggled over and never united. Yes, in fact, there is. One of the Dark Realms that was published was a character from Birthright. Oh, Ivani DK, thank you for the super chat. He says, my favorite Anshe is the elf, Rove Manslayer. Oh, God, we got to talk about Rove Manslayer. One of the few elves who, after the battle about Deismar, got so angry that the human cut down their forest, he decided to kill them all. He founded the wild hunt known as the Gilly Shee, which translates to the Hunt of the Elves. And yes, Rove Manslayer is awesome, and we need to talk about the elves now, because holy shit.
I'm a Wild Hunt enjoyer. I like him for the Azrai. I like him in The Witcher. Pretty cool.
Yes, the Azrai, which are not Azrai. That's a Z instead of an S. Very different. Absolutely no possible way to get those confused. All right, so at the height of the Battle of Deismar, this 1,500-year ago event, the elves realized, holy shit, Azrai's going to kill us all, and they decided to switch sides. But up until that point, they had been fighting for evil. And basically, no one forgot about that. Okay? And the reason why the elves were fighting with Azrai is because he had promised to drive the humans out of the elven lands, which had been constantly been encroached upon by the humans, who had cut down their trees and colonized their lands and took their realms for their own. By the time we get to the current era of Birthright, there are several elf realms, but they are all small pieces of what would have been massive forests. And many of the older elven realms have been cast down and destroyed, not unlike Warhammer for the high elves and how they colonize things. So yeah, it's they exist. Now I do see super chat. I will get to that, but I want to keep going on in the elves for a bit. So post Deus Mar, the elves were like, okay, listen, we fought on your side, humans. We switched sides. We should be friends now, right? And the humans were like, well, yes, but we need more room. We need to expand. We need to take more and more and more of your forests. And the elves just kept retreating. Some of them were not okay with this. Some of these elves, and again, it's important to remember, a lot of these guys were there. They know the gods were people. So they did not fear divine magic, and they had all the arcane magic that they wanted on their side. And they were pretty pissed. And some of them were like, why did we ever stop fighting the humans in the first place? That was a dumb decision. We should have just wiped them out. Azrai probably would have kept his word, right? Surely there's no way that could have gone wrong. Those elves, they continued to attack humans. They created the wild hunts, the Gillishi. And what this would mean is there would be a moonless night, and a human village on the borderlands of the realm might just get suddenly wiped out in the night by cantering hooves of horses with flowing manes made out of moonlight, and elven archers loosing shafts with unnatural accuracy right through the windows of your home. The Gillishi, they would go to some great lengths. There were, in fact, elven knighthoods that were founded on the idea of killing humans as sport. Okay. One of these elves, Rove Manslayer, he was empowered by the god of darkness, Azrai. His bloodline was full of it, and so he was corrupted slowly into a being simply called the Elf. He was the elfiest elf who ever elfed.
Wow.
He's actually like a major part of one of my campaigns because he's just really cool. He's such a fantastic antagonist because he's got points, he's got logic on his side in some cases, but he's also like irredeemably evil. But he also represents like that height of elven power and arrogance and nobility. Imagine if Anarian from Warhammer Fantasy was an absolute monster who desired the death of all humans, and that's Rove Manslayer.
The archetypal hero being this like villainous force is really cool narratively. There's some cool historical tension there, especially because the other historical knowledge of the elves sort of separates them from the main thrust of the setting, right?
Yeah. One of my players was so enamored by this whole story that he made a character as an elf whose goal was to found an organization called the Thenishi, or the Tears of the Elves, and their goal was to basically pull a Tolkien and move everybody to the west. We're sailing to the Grey Isles. We're going to find a new homeland, and we're going to leave behind all this bullshit. And that was his goal, was to basically round up all the disaffected elves and say, okay, we're killing humans isn't going to get us anywhere. Let's just get the hell out. Which I thought was a really fascinating story to tell. But anyway, the elves are just a part of this world. The dragons, as I said, there's only 12 of them, and they're incredibly powerful. All the wizards. Like, one of the things I love about the setting is you can read about one of the kingdoms. It's actually kind of like the Border Princes. It's not really ruled by anyone. It was called the Land of the Eight Peaks, I think. And it was the only person of note in this region was a wizard called the Eyeless One. And that's all we know about them, is that they're a wizard, and B, they're called the Eyeless One, and they must be capable of using true magic. So that's scary enough in and of itself. It's kind of one of the great things about Birthright. Now, I did promise to talk to you guys about some monsters, the unique monsters of the setting, the Onshalian, which Rove is one, but he's not a great example of it. And we'll get into that in just a second. So, we got a super chat from Aramob. You want to read this one?
Yeah, thanks so much, Arrow. how do you modernize Birthright for 2027 audiences?
Well, for one, I would de-emphasize the realm ruling part of it.
I don't
That
know.
would be like a source book that you publish after the main setting. That's in my opinion.
I think people do kind of like that big city building structure. Like, it lends itself well to tables, right? And people love tables. GMs fucking love having tables.
Mm. I think I would also make it clear that all the species are available. All the tieflings, dragonborn.
Mm-hmm.
You want to play Warforged? We'll find a way to make it work. Benjamin Fraser says that's the USP of the setting. The unique selling point is the realm mechanics. Maybe, I don't know. I feel like it is an add-on to the coolness of the setting, but that's just me.
Well, how do you make Regency work if you de-emphasize rulership?
Well, I would focus on what bloodlines mean for an adventurer. If you want to be a warrior king, cool. Like I said, maybe that's an appendix, maybe that's a source book that you release alongside the core book. But I would focus on like, hey, you're an adventurer. You go do adventuring things for these princes. You can get involved in the court politics if you want, but you do it through the lens of what D&D's core is about, which is going out and adventuring and doing cool stuff. And I would tie the conflict over the Iron Throne into those adventuring hooks and support a lot of dungeon crawling, which was mentioned earlier as one of the things that it lacked.
Could you reframe Regency into Legacy somehow?
Probably.
Like, make it less about dominion and more about influence and reputation?
Possibly. You could maybe do something with like past lives, where you can like your bloodline could connect you to your ancestors in some ways.
Yeah. And like use that to create narrative threads into the political elements of the setting and so on, but also to have some sense of reclamation or discovery.
So Cole Patterson, who asked us about his something from Birthright, says, "Ooh, I already gave my barbarian a blood-drinking axe, and they're about to meet a dwarf mastersmith that will tell them how to upgrade it, so it'll have to be made out of that metal. Timevril or True Silver is the name."
Very cool.
And Gnibble, I think that's how you pronounce it. Gnibble, thank you for being a member. Vera, do you want to read this one?
Yeah, it could be an opportunity for domain play rules. Okay, I see. And yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, the domain play is fun, and I was actually part of a play by post and a play by email where that was the focus. We were just ruling realms and waging war and putting out decrees, and that is fun. I'm not gonna lie, that can be super fun. Playing out the court of the king and the decisions you have to make as a ruler, that can be a lot of fun. But I have found in play, as a game master who's run many campaigns at Birthright, I found that most people are like, cool, that's something we do after we defeat the big bad. And now, because the realm has to mean something to you, right? Like, you have to adventure in that realm. You have to meet the people in the taverns, in the villages. You have to learn why this farming community is important to care about it, I feel.
So domain play is like specifically about the different systems of power that make a nation go, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, players don't want to bog down in that. What they do want is to like build things, like feel like they've made things sprout beneath them. I've found like people love like investing in a business. They love having minions, but they don't like court.
Mm-hmm. Well, you have to make court. You have to make court fun, and part of making court fun is making it meaningful. If they know that Lady Cadbury is a rival to the Countess's foppish son, that may mean that they don't care at all, because who cares? It's a foppish son. It's just some lady with a weird name. Or if they have done a lot of missions that tell them that the foppish son is actually a scheming mastermind behind a lot of the evil actions in the realm, and that Lady Cadbury is this naive woman who has offered them shelter on the night of the great storm when Kurikan's faithful rose up in a massive intertemple war, they might care then about whether the foppish son and Lady Cadbury are having some sort of arrangement.
This
See?
reminds me a lot of the conversation we had during the development of the High Elf books, because so much of that was about like how to make the politics center point for the entire campaign, even for like human players who were visiting and weren't able to really do politicking. And sort of the conclusion we came to is to build it around intrigues and around specific NPCs that can build alliances and be of use or of interest, and that you could manipulate or barter with to gain access to these like new spheres of thing. And I guess like doing that via tiered unlocks of some kind to build your domain out could work here.
Like I said, I've run a lot of Birthright, and my favorite way to do it is actually just adventure for a while, learn the lay of the land, and then become a regent. Don't start out as a regent. But that's what worked for me. I'm not going to say it's there. As we say often on the show, there is no one true way. If you find that starting out as a regent, as a ruler, works for you, go for it. Do that. And if you find a way to make that work really well, please tell me. I'd love to learn.
Well, I do think that the instinct to move away from like the super top level regency play and to like make the domains more down to earth, more about influence, more about reach and legacy might modernize it. I'm still stuck on this idea because I'm intrigued here, and we are now like X number of years from the release, redacted number of years.
30 years since it came out. Yes, I'm a man of a certain age. Stephen Lucas, thank you for the super chat. He says, unrelated Dark Sun hot take. Why no Fist of the North Star style monk yet? The archetype fits in with limited iron, even without quivering palm explosions. Oh, Maiwa Moe Shinderu. You are already dead.
You're talking my language. Well, like the archetypal apocalyptic vibe is the legacy of Mad Max and a Violent Jack and a Fist of the North Star. Like that is the enduring like wasteland battleship through the skyscraper blasted landscape, and it needs exploding heads.
Yeah, the Man of Seven Wounds. I think he would work great in Dark Sun. I think a Dark Sun subclass of monk that specializes in incredibly gory explosions would be awesome. It could also, like you say, it could even be, more flavored to Dark Sun specifically, although the psionics in Dark Sun are a great match for Fist of the North Star. God damn, why has nobody thought of this before? Yeah, great idea. We need to do a Dark Sun episode. We need to bring on Tim Brown to talk about it, and I'm sure he'd probably go, what is Fist of the North Star? But then he might also go, wow, that sounds awesome. So
it lines up pretty well. And like I guess like Toki and like the Gentle Fist sort of maps to the monk ethos that's more common in D&D.
Well, monks can be a lot of things. I mean, if you want to flavor your monk as just a drunken Viking bruiser who likes to beat people up in bars, you can totally do that.
It's pretty cool.
You don't have to be an Eastern, martial arts practitioner.
I just mean like the open hand / way of mercy specs, which are sort of aligned to that more than like making people fucking explode, which is again super rad.
Yeah, I mean it could be. I definitely want to write that down. Let's see. So let's talk about the Australian.
Yeah. I
said before that some of the most unique monsters and kingdoms exist in Birthright. And that is true, because the Anshalian, the monsters that were created by this bloodline of darkness, they are seriously powerful, and they are all unique beings of great strength. They are boss monsters, and it can be a lot of fun to talk about them because they were originally just people, or even sometimes just animals, or even sometimes just a regular monster. There's a guy called the Spider in the middle of Anweir. The Spider used to just be a goblin. He was just a lowly goblin, but he got so much of Azrai's blood that he eventually started to become more and more monstrous over time. And not unlike the forest goblins of Warhammer who ride spiders, his entire forest is full of spider riding goblins, and he himself is a Drider-like centaur being that encompasses all that is goblin and all that is spider together in one. Now, that's just one guy. the one that I most recently dealt with in my own campaigns is a creature called the Chimera. You might think, oh, a Chimera is not that strong. No. This is the Chimera, not a Chimera. In fact, I've got a model for her back here that's been professionally painted. I'll have to bring it out sometime to show you guys. It's really, really good. The Chimera was actually an elven wizard who was experimenting with, I think it was half elven, but she was experimenting with ways to extend her lifeline and like combine her physiology with that of other creatures to find a way to extend her life unnaturally. And this combination of arcane experimentation and the blood of darkness, because this is always a factor with the Anshalian, started to corrupt her and change her, and so she became a being that was at some times this same slender elven wizard that she had been, but other times she was a massive three-headed draconic-like beast with a lion head and a goat head, and could blast you with very powerful spells and the physical power of a real monster. Imagine a Chimera and crank that thing up to 11. She also ruled her own realm, a lawless region of the peaks called the Chimeron. And in my D&D campaign, my players had to, they were basically tasked by the neighboring nation to clear that shit out, because goddamn, we do not want this giant fucking monster right next to us all the time. And also, if you take it over, we now have a friendly buffer state between us and everyone else. So it was a win-win. And the players were like, well, hey, we'd like to rule a realm. Let's go do this. And they spent the next 12 levels clearing out the Chimeron and setting up and finding the Chimera and facing her in her lair and defeating her in this massive final encounter. And we played that for, like, I want to say 2.5 years. Long time. This is a really long campaign. It's really, really fun. Really, really good. But this is what I'm saying, is that the regions of the setting can be very different than anything you've encountered in the Forgotten Realms. One of my favorite places is a kingdom that's not ruled by an Anshalian, but it's also not ruled by a standard species at all. It's Thurazor, which is a kingdom of goblins. It's ruled by a very canny, a very cunning goblin king, kind of like Skarsnik, if Skarsnik was not a complete asshole. And instead, imagine Skarsnik, but he's got, you know, this kingdom of Thurazor, and he's like, how can I survive when I'm surrounded by elves and humans and, you know, weird monsters and wizards? Well, the answer is I can start to try and style my court after those of the human people, and I can maybe try and incorporate myself even into their machinations and schemes for the Iron Throne, because I can offer them things that no one else can. I have goblin wolf riders and bugbears, and I have gladiatorial pits, and I have bat riders who can go aloft in the night and scout out enemy encampments. I have things that none of the others do, and I can offer that to them in return for trade routes and agreements and treaties, and possibly even people like lending me their military forces to scour my realm of the occasional band of adventurers I need to get gone.
Aw.
Justin Terry says, I play my monks like Friar Tuck. Oh, I'd love to see that. I would love to see that.
I like the energy.
Well, I've been just waxing at length about Birthright. You've heard me ramble on now for an hour. What do you think so far?
I think there's a lot of potential here. I think this is a setting that lends itself well to a lot of different party ambitions. Like, again, I like the capacity to go big scale, to have a kingdom, to have a domain of sorts. I think it is positive to enable that kind of play style, and that a map that is designed around the characters getting to do this is pretty healthy. Furthermore, I think it is a setting structure that lends itself well to really cool character narratives, because the bloodline and what is inherited and what you're responsible for as a result of it is compelling, right?
Can be. Again, if you are into the idea of some Game of Thrones level intrigue and scheming and politics, if you like the idea of like, okay, my bloodline is strong, and that means I'm going to need to secure an heir, or I'm going to need to secure a equally strong bloodline as the mother of my heir, right? For example, or the father if you're a female character. then that could be interesting. That could be a pretty interesting romance if you want to go that route.
Yeah, there's a lot of compelling stuff that can spring out of this. Also, we got a chat way earlier from TS7166. We love you, Lorebeards. We love you too.
Love you too, guy. That's great.
No, though, I'm compelled. I feel like this kind of structure really lends itself to deep character narratives, to long-running campaigns, which I love. I see the appeal.
Like I said, it's beyond the nations and the rulers. Birthright has all these really cool lore innovations, I think, that make it feel unlike any other D&D setting. You've got the idea of low magic but high stakes. There are many forces out there trying to bring back Azrai, the god of evil. There are many forces out there who want to overrun the human kingdoms and erase them from existence. There are many forces out there who want to see all kinds of strange things and awaken dragons and bring those back. Like I said, there's literally a realm that is almost Skyrim before Skyrim, which was the Reuric Islands. It's also really genuinely multicultural in a way that the Forgotten Realms does try very hard to be multicultural, but it all unfortunately often seems like a big homogenous blob of people, right? With only a few standouts as like, okay, there's the Moonshae Isles, and those people are very Celtic, and there's the Hal Ruins, and those people are very, or Mohorandi, I guess, who are the very Egyptian. But Birthright has like some very specific and genuinely multicultural areas, which the Kanasi have their Mediterranean influences and their Arabian influences, and you can deal with the genies of the city of brass, but you can also be involved in the raids that are launched from Vosgard of these, again, barbarian Mad Max Russians on top of furry lizards running through the snow to take you down. None of the 5 regions in Cerealia have a central government. They've all been at one time part of the Enwerian Empire, or they've broken off from their own ancient civilizations. Everything is balkanized in a lot of ways. So there's not like a high king to go appeal to. The high king is who you could be. And one of the things I love is you can just pick a point on the map, any point on the map, and say, what about here? And I can tell you like 15 different things about the places around it that make it very fascinating and interesting, and why there's pressures and conflicts that you need to be aware of. I'm sorry. I know I'm going off.
No, that's good though. Like the balkanized structure is what lends itself to this kind of play, because there being these tensions and pressures that can lead to, in your table's case, taking over an entire region of the map. That is part of what makes a good setting. Like a strong element of like war game design and to some extent tabletop design is having areas that are in flux, that are possible to slant against and tilt against for reasons that are compelling for the characters. And you've got a lot of that here.
Like I said, there's a lot of interesting little mysteries in Birthright. There's the mystery of these guys called the Lost. Who are the Lost? The Lost are boss-level undead, liches and death knights and things like that, who all seem to be disciples or confidants of Azrai back when he was alive and as a god. And they seem to be like working in the background, trying to create some sort of ritual or some sort of scheme that will cause major concerns for a lot of things in the Birthright setting. There's even a realm that's ruled by the Lich of the Lost, this guy called the Magian, who is a very sinister, Venger-like character from the Dungeons & Dragons animated series. And it's pretty fascinating. That's just one of the little mysteries. There's the mystery of what's going on in the Shadow World. There's the mystery of why the dragons are waking up. There's mysteries of what's going on underneath the surface, because the dwarves are locked in this constant war against Orogs, which are essentially Urukai. They're orcs that have interbred with ogres until you have a halfway step between them.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can imagine this massive underground conflict that very little is known about, they just occasionally will boil to the surface, and you'll see this, see dwarves desperately fighting off wave after wave of screaming Urukai-like Orogs. There's a lot of stuff going on underneath the surface of Birthright. I don't mean just the underground war, but I mean all these other plots and schemes and thoughts. The gods,
funny.
The gods themselves have their own schemes, and there's even a love triangle amongst the gods, which is kind of fascinating. There's a goddess of basically stealth and banditry and thievery called Eloele, and she is kind of in love with Kurikan, who's the god of war and storms, but there's other gods who want to try to get in on that action, and the father of Kurikan doesn't approve, and their churches get involved in all this stuff too.
Of course.
It's fascinating. There's so many layers and levels to it. Then there's actually the people who are trying to unite Anweir. Like just in Anweir, you've got two major factions that are vying for power. You've got the Archduke of Barone, who is this absolute bear of a man. I mean, he is kind of our Ed Stark King in the North archetype, where he's a very stoic, very man of few words, very stern, very hard, very unforgiving, right? And he is trying to unite the northern factions together. And then in the south, you've got Prince Avenil, and he literally has a birthmark shaped like a dragon on his face, which is it's what's called a blood mark. It's something that is carried by his bloodline. Everyone in the Avenil bloodline has this mark, right? And he is working with all the merchant princes and barons and little wizardly lords of the south and trying to weld them into a coalition to take over the Iron Throne, because the Imperial Senate, the former seat of power for the Anweirian Empire, is within his territory, which gives him an advantage over Barone, but Barone has more men and more forces. Fun fact, the realm ruled by Rove Manslayer is directly in between these two people, and is one of the reasons why they have not yet had a major war. Yeah, Ivani DK points out that they were publishing these 24-page books about a single kingdom with lots of information on persons of interest, adventure hooks, views on neighboring domains, conflicts within the kingdom, and notes on the culture. This is true. They did appear like they kind of seemed like adventures, but they weren't. They were trying to do like a source book in a little folio. And I appreciated the effort, and they did publish a whole bunch of them, but it always felt to me like I think somebody would see this and think it was an adventure, but it wasn't.
Yeah, because that's the kind of book that's really useful if you are a very confident GM who has their plans already made and they want more setting info to better inform what you're trying to accomplish. I can see where people might feel a little misled there, or that wasn't enough for them, right?
Well, to contrast it, look at the Van Richten's guides for Ravenloft, which were it was in the same general design space of here's information about the world and adventure hooks and monsters and things to fight, but it was presented very much as this is something you can read to learn more about the world. Whereas the folios that Ivani DK is talking about were called Player's Secrets of, Barone, or Player Secrets of Cariel, for example. Right. And it was like Player Secrets. Okay, why does the DM have this? I don't know. It felt, I don't know. Ivani DK, you can tell me if I'm off base here, but it always seemed to me like it just didn't quite get the name right, the nomenclature, the packaging. It never seemed to be the thing that it was trying to be. If you can hold the fort for a minute, I'll see if I can grab one and show to the folks here.
I'm someone who likes that kind of book, right? I enjoy having a reference guide that feels like it's a little more tailored to when I have my thrust of the plot, but want to populate it and make things a little more coherent in the setting. it just feels like the kind of thing to be perhaps a bit of a letdown for someone who's looking for more direct structure, right? Like that's the supplemental kind of book, and they're useful. These are usually the kind of thing that help you out when you already have a strong direction but want to populate it. I've seen like gazetteers like this popularized in a lot of fan circles too. Like there's a whole school of these that do in the Ratcatchers Guild for Warhammer Fantasy, where they like just write up townships and areas like Bretonia and so on for people who want to venture there and already know what they want to do but want it to feel more real. Something verisimilitude.
Here is the Player Secrets of Lineae. It is basically a folio. It doesn't have a spine or anything on it to give you a title. It's written by Alan Varney, who's actually a friend of mine. And inside you've got like a cool map of the region. You've got maps of areas within the region. You've got like a family tree of the ruler.
Aww.
And even a dungeon that you can explore, which is actually the Rose Palace of the ruler of Lineae.
Oh, well, that's great. If there's a whole dungeon, that's something, right?
Kind of. So this is the booklet. It's only 32 pages long. And it has, the history. It's got tips for a new region. It's got rumors, secrets, and plots, and holdings, and NPCs, things of that nature. Also, the art style wasn't super exciting on the inside. Like the cover art for Birthright is amazing. On the inside, it was a lot of woodcut style art, which didn't always work super well. And it was in black and white, so it didn't really, I didn't feel like it popped super well either. So yeah, that's some kind of, I think there was some production issues that maybe held it back. I also want to show off another one because I was telling you about the names that are difficult to pronounce.
Yeah.
I'd like you to take a stab at this one, okay?
Oh boy. Touring Evil Knievel.
This is for the realm of Tuariavel, which is one of the few elven kingdoms that did manage to incorporate with some aspects of humankind. So it is ruled by a half elf on what's called the Thorn Throne of Tuariavel. It's actually really cool. One of the more interesting regions in Birthright. I'm a big fan of it. But yeah, that's an example of how difficult those names were to pronounce. You'd look at that and be like, what? So, hey, another thing I would do to update for 2027 is I would maybe massage the names a little bit, or at least the spelling, to make them easier to get people invested. Because if they can't say it, how are they going to love it? You know what I mean?
I feel like I was close, right?
Oh, you weren't too far off. But again, like that's not even the worst. That's not even the hardest. But there's Tuara Noon, which means the land of silence, for example. And Anun is spelled very Welsh. It's got no vowels at all. Annwin, Anun. How you get there? Hey, I'm not Welsh. Andy could come on and tell us how we get there, I guess. I'd love to hear him talk about these names. Holy shit. Yeah, Ivani says, my thought they might have later combined them into a bigger book, The Player Secrets of Anweir. Yeah, Anweir, like doing it on a larger realm would be pretty great. W is a vowel. I mean, Y technically is a vowel, but why? Why is it a vowel? It is a vowel.
Sometimes.
Avani says there's stuff in there that really belonged in the hands of the DM, especially since each kingdom had a ruler, so each folio had something happen to them. They died in an accident or were assassinated, and the folio would maybe have info on who did the assassination and what surrounding kingdoms had spies, etc. These were written from the perspective of you being the regent, you being the ruler, you being in charge of the nation. This is, I think, contributed to that overall feel that was the whole thing, that was all Birthright was, but it was more. That it was D&D plus, not instead of D&D, we're going to run a country. You see what I'm saying? So yeah, there was a strange perception, I think, that maybe it may have been fostered by the approach of their publications, their books. But my God, the setting is so cool, so cool. I always wanted to do more with the Shadow World. The Shadow World was always a fun thing to sort of take your characters into and have this sort of Black Mirror-esque Feywild version waiting for them on the other side. Because the Shadow World is not unlike, say, that old series, Tales from the Dark Side, where it literally is, you see the dark reflection of the place you are in. It was a fun way to hold up a funhouse mirror to the player characters and let them learn something about themselves and also the places that they were adventuring in, the people that they, were ostensibly saving or living amongst. It's a neat little fun way to further experience the setting.
Yeah, just I can see why that would be a challenge. Like, I feel almost like some source books are higher difficulty than others to use.
Yeah, and Ivani DK points out that one of the issues of Kingdom Management was the paperwork, the bookkeeping. My God, I hate bookkeeping.
Mm-hmm.
A modern revival could and should take advantage of apps to calculate taxes, regency points. You could just abstract a lot of this stuff, Ivani DK. Just saying, if it were me, I might, less bookkeeping, the better is the kind of my game design approach for most things.
Did you have to tax your kingdom?
You did. You had to decide on what level of taxation.
Oh, fantastic.
Per province, because some provinces were richer than others, and some people.
I see.
One of my good friends, I was doing a Birthright game in the army. Was one of my friends. This guy was a nut, and he loved to really get into Birthright and just really get into the idea of like what it meant to levy these kinds of taxes. And he always liked to joke that heavy taxes meant that your soldiers would be riding up to a village, and some poor farmer would be like, "No, sire, don't take my last chicken." And the knight would say, "It's for the king, you peasant." And they'd ride off,
I'm seeing a Monty Python flair here.
Yeah, Lich Lord cares, but my spreadsheets. Oh, God. Yeah, bookkeeping is not my ideal. In fact, when I was designing Wrath and Glory, I actually decided to get rid of tracking ammunition, which is something you used to have to do in Dark Heresy, for example. And just kind of, I basically said you could just fire your gun as long as you wanted to, but if you wanted to spend ammunition, like you had a clip, right, a reload, well, they were called reloads, you could spend a reload to do something extra with your gun, and then next turn you'd have to reload it. But as long as you were not doing something special, you were just shooting your gun, you never really ran out of ammo. Because I hate tracking that kind of stuff.
It's a bit of a pain, yeah, just ever so slightly.
Well, it depends on the game. I mean, if we're playing Warhammer Fantasy, that it does make sense to track how many reloads I have, because that's a very gritty, there's a certain OSR feel to things where you're like, how many arrows do I have? Do I have enough arrows?
There are also relatively few automatic weapons in fantasy.
not zero.
Not zero.
But
relatively few. Not many.
Okay, so Justin Terry points out that a Birthright video game in the vein of Civilization or Crusader Kings would be cool. I agree. And, fun fact, there was a video game in the 90s for Birthright. It was called Gorgon's... What was it called? Gorgon's Challenge? Let me see if I can find this here. I owned it. I played it. It was interesting. Let me see if I could get you some more information on that, because it was a game that I did play and enjoyed, but it did also use... It was primarily about the domain management with some dungeon crawling, and the dungeon crawling was like a very basic version of Doom. It was a first person, like Eye of the Beholder style, going down passageways, and there'd be a monster in front of you. You'd be like, and it had like these very basic animations for like fighting monsters and casting spells. It was the 90s, man. We didn't have really good video games back then. At least not, we did, but they were few and far between. So
well, there is like a popular game now I've seen like played on stream a lot, where you like can have a kingdom simulator where your chat can like chime in and levy votes to various causes. And
in the streaming age. Yeah, a streaming age version of this would be pretty rad.
Well, there are things like this now. Like it's all about kingdom management there, but that's sort of the archetype, right?
Yeah, the Gorgon's Alliance is what it was called. Thank you. Avani DK said Gorgon's Crown. Gorgon's Crown is actually the name of his kingdom that he rules up in the way north. Gorgon's Alliance was the name of the 1997 strategy RPG hybrid. It was published by Sierra Online, if people remember that. Oh my God.
Sierra.
Get in the time machine with me. We're going back to the era of Sierra Online, my guys. It was a very ambitious game because it was really 3 games in one. It had that the gameplay mode where you had the overland strategy map and you were doing your trade routes and you were managing your kingdom and raising armies. It had the army versus army battle mode, and it had the adventure mode where you would do your little adventures. I loved it, but I think anybody who played it would also say it was extremely basic and extremely ambitious, and it couldn't quite deliver on all the things it wanted to do. Avani says it was supposedly the first of 5 games, and rumors were the plan was that if they would have all 5, they could combine the world maps like Total War Warhammer. Hey!
Pretty cool.
RTS Gamer. Good time to come in, RTS Gamer. Love your avatar there. He says, I'm hearing a lot of reasons why I love games like this, to have kingdom and warfare baked into the world. It makes it feel more real. It's why Warhammer is so cool to me. Might steal some ideas. Absolutely. Go steal some ideas, because Birthright is chock full of really good ones. The Exiled One asks, how scary were the remaining dragons of Birthright? Could I defeat them with an army?
Yeah, if I could add on to this question, were there always 12, or is this like a newer kind of development?
The Dragons of Birthright, I'm trying to recall. Yeah, this is a 30-year-old setting, y'all. I'm doing my best here. I believe that they were the remaining survivors of a much older species that may have even existed before the elves. They were deliberately understated. They were really kept as the background type. I mean, are you guys familiar at all with the Iron Kingdoms, the way the Iron Kingdoms handles dragons? Because it's not unlike that. In the Iron Kingdoms, dragons are immense beings of myth and legend. They are essentially demigods. The Cerulean dragons, now that I've looked them up, I think I can tell you a little bit more about it. They predated the elves and the dwarves. They were just supremely old. The thing about them is that they were peaceful amongst themselves. Dragons didn't fight dragons, but they were very territorial to everyone else. It suggested that they had some sort of long period of decline that ended in a truce. And the dragons of Cerulean were not organized by color. If you found a red dragon in Cerulean, it didn't necessarily mean it was evil, and it didn't necessarily mean it breathed fire. It just meant that it was red. But there were some of them that were evil, some of them were neutral, some of them were good. It gave you a spectrum of dragons to draw on and still present a dragon as a major threat without people knowing everything they needed to know about it from the color of its scales, which I thought was kind of cool. They preferred intimidation and spellcasting, their breath weapons over melee. They radiated fear in a 50-yard radius.
Oh my God.
That's a lot of fear. That's a lot of dragon fear.
That's a battle map.
Their breath weapon was a combined stream of acid and fire. They were spellcasters equivalent to 9th to 16th level wizards, and they did use true magic. They were serious business. They functioned as living sages. They held on to magical, natural, and extraplanar lore that were forgotten by the younger races, and they strongly disliked being disturbed by anyone coming up to ask them any stupid questions about how the world works. Some of them naturally viewed the lesser races as vermin to be exterminated. So if a dragon were to share its wisdom with you, it would come wrapped in riddles and mystery rather than straightforward answers.
What I'm hearing is negotiate carefully.
Yeah, oh yeah. These are kind of like Parthenax from Skyrim. They are big deals with a lot of knowledge and should be very, very respected. Let me see if I can get some game stats.
Hell yeah.
Now, remember, this would have been in Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 2nd Edition terms, so don't try to equate it to a 5e monster. And I'll have to see if I can get that info for you. All right, so let's see here. It would appear that combat is unwise. Yeah, I agree. At least one of the dragons was the size of a mountain range and had slept for over a millennia. It was detailed in a Dragon magazine article. Yes, there is one of the cerulean dragons is literally a mountain range.
I feel like that guy's fear aura should be larger than 50 yards, actually.
Let's see here. Notably, there are no such things as young or juvenile dragons in Cerealia. They're all ancient to great worm size and age. Yeah, they were. I guess I can't find any like specific stats other than the things I already quoted, but 50-yard radius worth of dragon fear and 16th level casters. I mean, that's 8th level spells. That's limited wish, baby. That's a dragon who can cast limited wish. I would approach with caution. Let's put it that way. I would approach with great caution. Let's see here. Talking about the video game, Avani GK says, I remember it as janky AF. I remember I had a mod cheat that allowed me to play as any ruler elves who you could not normally play. That's true. I do remember that. I had that mod. Had the special ability that their province level did not reduce the source level. So civilization typically reduced the amount of power you could have as a wizard in a realm. So if you had a province that was very heavily populated, you didn't get a lot of magical power out of it. Conversely, clerics got a lot of power out of heavily civilized areas. So the wizards were the recluses living in their towers far away from the cities, and the high priests were like, yeah, baby, I'm right next to the king with my giant temple in the middle of the capital. It worked out kind of fun. The elves did have a thing where it didn't matter. Like, no matter how much elven civilization was in an area, it did not diminish the potential you could draw from in terms of magic. Again, this is on the realm level, not for regular adventuring. So, have I successfully sold? Would you play a game in Birthright, Vera? Would you want to be a part of this?
Yeah, dude, absolutely. This is cool. I'm sold. Like, I like this kind of structure. Like I said,
what kind of character would you build?
I don't know. Like, it depends on the structure of the campaign, right? Because you can do so much. I feel like I am intrigued by this idea of like discovering lost legacies. I'm intrigued by the idea of investiture. I can see cool narratives that could emerge here, right? Like being trusted with this legacy of divinity and like to make a difference with it sounds fun, sounds interesting. Battling against the historical struggles as an elf could be fun.
Well, imagine if you are a young ruler.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe your parents were killed in a horrible accident or assassinated by a rival nation, even more fun. And you are the young prince or princess who now has to take control. And you have a weak bloodline. Maybe, your father married for love instead of for politics, and he married a commoner, and you're like, oh no, I'm not going to be a very strong ruler because my bloodline is weak. But there's a way that your bloodline could grow stronger, and that's because the monster known as the Basilisk, not a basilisk, the Basilisk, rules a poisoned desert realm right next door to you. And if you were brave enough, if you gathered your strongest allies and led an expedition into this blasted land to kill that creature, you could absorb some of its bloodline into your own and grow stronger.
It's a pretty cool adventure hook. I can't help but think about Diablerie here as a World of Darkness enjoyer, right? Like there's some kind of thematic resonance. These are both games that are kind of political swinging, at least potentially, where taking on challenging foes is a good way to gain strength yourself.
Yeah, so like Diablerie, it's called Blood Theft in Birthright. It is generally frowned upon to prey upon your fellow nobles.
You don't say.
But it is generally okay, if somewhat risky, to go out to blooded monsters and kill them and absorb some of their power. The risk is that potentially Azrai's bloodline could overwhelm your own, and you could actually go from the bloodline of, say, Rornil is the bloodline of the ancient god of magic, and maybe you had like a supernatural ability to like detect magic and sense magic and even like know the history of a magic item if you picked it up and held it in your hands because of that connection. And let's say you go out and you kill the basilisk in one-on-one combat, and at the height of the battle, you feel the rush of power as his bloodline is gifted to you as you stab him with your Timevril spear. But then you realize that your bloodline has been corrupted. It's been taken over by Azrai. Now, that doesn't mean anything right now, but sometime down the line, if you were to live long enough and gain even more power, you too might become a monster if that happened to you. It was a risk.
Kind of neat, though. Kind of neat. I like my edgy narrative beats.
Exile 1 says, is blood theft okay if you have the patronage of the goddess of thieves? Oh, wow. If you could frame it to Alole as a theft, because it is blood theft, well, you might have the support of her temple. But keep in mind, the temples are not always, very rarely are the temples actually the rulers of the nation. They're the ones that more or less operate behind the scenes. Whereas your fellow nobles, and especially the rulers of the realms around you, will view you with disfavor, concern, and caution if you are known to be a blood thief.
Disfavor is a good way to put it.
So yeah, yes, but also maybe not.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, the new gods, the ones that were born from Deusmar, that were all actually people at one point, they run the gamut. You've got a couple of evil gods. You've got Krisha, who's the goddess of winter. You've got Belinik, who's the god of carnage and conquest, kind of like Khorne. And Krisha is basically the ice queen, or the Kislev but evil is another way to put it. Forgotten Realms has a character like this. What's the name of the one in Forgotten Realms?
Oh, shoot, I
can't remember. Anyway, yeah, there's a goddess of winter in there that's also the same way. Then you've got Eric was the god of the hunt and the god of nature, and he was actually the patron god of the Ruric Highlands. Belinik and Krisha are the patron gods of Vosgard, the barbarian Russian lands. Halen was the god of noble war and lordship. Kind of a weird deified version of Rabute Gilliman, if you want to think of it that way. Who's he was technically good aligned, but he also was very much enforcing the status quo of the feudal system, which not awesome. Let's put it that way.
Good is sometimes relative, right?
Yeah.
That does happen.
Ariel the Frost Maiden. Thank you very much, chat. Appreciate you guys. That's who I was thinking of. Ariel the Frost Maiden from Forgotten Realms. So Halen was the god of Anweir. He was the god most worshipped in Anweir. Avani, or Avonlea, as she's also called, which is Avani DK's namesake, was the goddess of knowledge and light and the sun. She was the goddess who was primarily over the Kanasi peoples, which explains why they are considered very scholarly, and they celebrate things like libraries and understanding things, and less about conquest, for example. Those are just some of the ones. I talked about Alole, I talked about Kurikan a little bit, and then of course there are the gods of the dwarves. There's Moradin and all the other dwarfish pantheons. And you've got, I think the halflings have their gods as well, and of course all the non-human species like the goblins worship Malgubiet, the gnolls worship Yinogu, all that kind of stuff. In fact, there is a pretty big plains nation, quote unquote. There's an unconquered stretch of plains that is heavily settled by gnolls and roaming tribes of these hyena-headed monsters. It's pretty great.
I do like gnolls.
Yeah. Gnolls are great. Goblins are great in this setting. like I said, they even have their own realms, which it's even in the ground realms, that seems very rare to have a non-human or non-player character typically ruled area. And even if they are, they're usually like that. Those are the dark lands of the orcs of Thar, like from Mystara. But in Birthright, they're treated as a little bit more accepted and tolerated by the regular human nations. Most of the time, that's because they have to tolerate the elves, because the elves are just too goddamn strong with all their true magic and shit. And despite how much animosity there is between elves and humans, they just are like, you know what, it's fine. We'll worry about it later. We got other fish to fry. Head on down to Knoll Town, says Godzilla Rex. Yeah. They're actually right next to a big-ass mummy lord, which I was so excited to... I really wanted my players to get there, but we never quite managed to make it. Because I was gonna go all in on like the Anubis-style mummy lord of the Knoll people and have like a whole thing. There's the the Flines, which are their like martial warrior masters that have like psionic flails they hit you with and stuff. It's pretty wild. Good times.
No, very cool.
All right, so if you were to make a character for Birthright, Vera, what kind of character would you make?
I'm leaning towards some kind of a conflicted elven repentant, perhaps, one with a lot of baggage, trying to navigate their perhaps responsibilities and legacies. There is a lot of room there. It depends on the campaign, though, because like, are we doing like a domain focus? Is it going to be trying to negotiate between the party for some kind of rulership? Like, there's a lot you can do.
Well, if it were me, I would start you guys out as just adventurers who happen to be blooded. Probably blooded. You have a bloodline, but you are not a ruler yet. And I would probably, pick a part of the map and say, okay, we're here, and these are the concerns and pressures that surround this place, and here's a ton of plot hooks, go. Which direction do you want to go? And I would try to make you care about the region before I had you take it over and rule it.
I feel like with the skepticism on divine magic that elves have, I'd want to be intrigued by that. It'd be
my dad told me not to do this, so I'm gonna go do it.
Yeah, like what? What do be divinity? What do we do here? How that works? Tell me more.
Yeah, I mean, an elf who's interested in being a cleric or being a priest or being a druid, or however you want to do it in terms of classes. There's a lot of ways to go, really, frankly. I mean, there's even there's a sorcerer bloodline that's into divine stuff as well. So yeah, there's a lot of different ways you could go about it. It could be a paladin, whatever you want. But that would be fascinating because you'd have to like, okay, let me figure out who each god is, discover which one of them I feel deserves my attention and my time, and then maybe go find out what people who were contemporary. Some of my people knew this person when they were just a man or just a woman, and I would like to know that.
Yeah, because they really do have power. I saw it. They seem okay. It's intriguing.
Well, then there's a lot of temple politics too. You can get caught up in there's the one true Orthodox Church of Halen, and then there's all the other churches. Oh, Ivani DK points out that technically the city of Anweir, the old capital of the empire, is not part of Avenil. Is a free city ruled by a steward who makes sure that it is ready for when the real emperor returns to sit on the throne. You are technically correct, Ivani, which is the right kind of correct. However, I will point out that if you want to get to the city of Anweir, you have to pass through Avenil, who controls access, shall we say, to large amounts of how you get to that city. That is an advantage. I think you would have to agree that is one of the things that he has as an ace up his sleeve, is he is physically can put armies around it if he needed to. Yeah, the city of Anweir can be really fun. We actually had a adventure where Thurazor, the Goblin Nation, was like, I want to be part of the Senate, even if the Senate is just this ancient tradition at this point that nobody pays any attention to, and they just send off their third sons to sit around and talk about things that'll never happen. I want to be a part of this. So they had to travel to the city of Vanweir. They had to talk to the steward. They had to get the goblin representative approved by a majority votes. It was a whole thing. Like, now that was some actual politicking and scheming, and you know, it worked out because we were really excited about that particular storyline. But
that's cool though. That's cool. Like, I like the politicking and scheming. Like, I'd want to like play into the metaphysics of the setting, the way that Regency works. Like, there's a lot there to unpack and untangle. It's cool.
Yeah, it is very cool. I've had characters who have transformed into Anshalian. I've had characters who have become the opposite. There is something called the Shalian, which is where you have the bloodline become so strong that it doesn't really corrupt you, but it makes you into something more than you were. Mm-hmm. There's like a guy called the Satyr, or Satyr, however you want to pronounce it, who basically had a bloodline that just turned him into a Satyr, the Satyr, for example.
Why do they call him that, Ross?
Yeah, because he had all the powers and abilities of a Satyr, but to a greater extent. I like the larger than life feel of the setting. I like the fact that, you know, you can talk about it in terms that are typically only used in Lord of the Rings. You know, like it is, you know, Smaug ruled the Misty Mountains. It was only he, and his dominion was total and absolute. You know, stuff like that. You can say those things in Birthright, and it can be true. In the Forgotten Realms, it often feels like the politics in the kingdoms have always been, and they always will be, and there's not a lot you can do to affect the status quo. But in Birthright, that is not true. There are so many opportunities to tip the scales one way or the other, and some of the places that they have set up with the idea of regency, or with the idea of kingship as a theme, can be really fascinating. There's one realm actually that's ruled by an usurper who actually kicked out the rightful ruler, who lives in the woods like Robin Hood with his merry men. And like, that's a story waiting to happen, is to go find that guy and help him reclaim his throne, and then like maybe be part of his court, or at least bring him in as an ally to your kingdom or something like that. Avani DK, God, I love that you're here, Avani DK, because you keep popping in with all these little factoids. Darian Yvonne, who's the ruler of Avenel, as I said, he's the guy in the south who's trying to take over the Iron Throne. He really hates whenever his rivals are invited to the Imperial City, since then he has to provide them with an escort to ensure their safety. Safety. I would not trust Darian Yvonne with my safety, let's put it that way, because there's always a chance that some horrible accident could befall me. Oh no, monsters appeared, and we were cunningly led astray by a distraction before they attacked your convoy. We got back just in time to see them off, but alas, too late. That's the kind of stuff. There's some backstabbing bullshit that goes on in those realms, man. Let me tell you. Stephen Lucas, thank you for the super chat. Go ahead with this one, Vera.
Yeah, I just remembered Birthright is the only setting with the infamous half-elf / half-orc third party. Thank you for the super chat, Stephen. The infamous half-elf / elf-orc.
Well, so there were adventures published for Birthright that did not understand what the setting was about. The most infamous one I could think of is actually Warlock of the Stone Crowns. And in Warlock of the Stone Crowns, this was a actual published adventure for the setting from TSR. And in this adventure, you encounter drow living underground. And if you heard me talk about the elves, that whole story, not once did I ever say that there were dark elves, because they don't exist. Drow are not part of this setting, and yet somehow some guy wrote up an adventure, and somebody in WotC was like, yep, sounds good. Well, not WotC at the time, would have been TSR. Someone at TSR was like, this sounds great. No notes. Let's just publish it. Navani DK, are you familiar with Warlock of the Stone Crowns? Can you back me up on that? Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about with the half-elf, half-orc, buddy.
The elf-orc.
You're going to have to tell me about that one. If it's a third-party published thing, yeah, I'm not aware of it.
I've not really heard of that, though. Like, I'm curious.
Morning to Crescent says, did Game of Thrones Skizanate script writers write that adventure? Woo! Nice
Harsh.
burn. I like it. That's actually pretty great. Oh my gosh. So yeah, we have just this is an iceberg, y'all. We have talked about just the very top of it. There's so much to dive into to get into the little nooks and crannies. I mean, I could just spend my entire time here talking about the kingdoms, or I could spend my entire time here talking about the Onshalian, or I could spend all my time talking about what happens if you finally get the Iron Throne. If you were to somehow unite Anweir, which is kind of what Avenil and Barone are trying to do, you could reforge an empire that once stretched across most of the continent. At one time, Anweir ruled all of the Kanasi realms, all of the Brector lands, the majority of the Reuric Highlands, and Anweir. They ruled 4 out of the 5. They never fully conquered Vosgard. It's the only one they never conquered. But if you were to somehow unite Anweir under the Iron Throne, you would be wielding a massive amount of power. Because again, the rest of the continent is balkanized. There is no High King to stand up against you. Your only real threat at that point would be the Gorgon, and that's only if he cared to get involved, which he might, because he thinks the Iron Throne is his by right. But if you somehow manage to distract the Gorgon, you could go reconquer all those ancient lands and bring the entire continent under your rule once again and forge a mighty empire. Wouldn't that be kind of cool?
Okay, this is compelling.
There's a lot of stories you can tell with that. Avani DK says, the ruler of Endir, who's rumored he bought the kingdom from its previous ruler, who sadly died when he traveled into the domain next door, known as the Spiderfell. That's where the spider lives. Remember that guy we talked about? Definitely nothing nefarious going on here. Right? Yeah. There's so much backstabbing and stuff. Avani says he never owned any of the adventures, so I had to buy the stuff that gave me the most for my few coins. Warlock in the Stonecrowns is not a terrible adventure, but it is just definitely not that. It is not very Birthright. Stephen Lucas says, "Oh, he got the half-orc, half-elf wrong. That's Kingdoms of Calamar, not Birthright. Kingdoms of Calamar. Oh, that's a setting we could talk about sometime. I bet you're not familiar with it.
I am not. I'm curious though. I do like my kingdom building.
Kingdoms of Calamar, very briefly, was a D&D setting created by the guys who published Knights of the Dinner Table magazine, which is Kenzer and Company. That's the name of their group.
Okay.
And the Kingdoms of Calamar were fun. I wouldn't say they were super compelling. Like I prefer the Scarred Lands to Kingdoms of Calamar. And I really want to talk about Scarred Lands at some point because that's a really great setting. But Kingdoms of Calamar is interesting. It's worth at least a little discussion. But even more than that, though, we should talk about Hackmaster. Because Hackmaster is fucking awesome. Which was a parody of Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, but it was a parody that gained a life of its own, and people actually played it, and it was not terrible because Advanced Dungeons and Dragons is certainly a playable game.
Well, like, as a known goofball, I have a soft spot for parody games.
Oh my god. Yeah, Justin Terry says, imagine slaying the Gorgon, taking the Iron Throne, and descending as the new Dark God. Now, that's the thing about Birthright. It could go either way. There's nothing saying it has to be, a Tolkien-esque, revival, a new age of mankind. It could end in the ascension of a new Dark God and doom and gloom for everybody. Morning to Chris says he wants to hear about Ghostwalk. I'm not as familiar with Ghostwalk as I should be. So I'll make sure if we can add that to the list.
I want to ascend as a dark god. My edgy little heart's beating in my chest.
Yeah, half-orc, half-elves would not make sense in Birthright because there are no orcs in Birthright. There are the Orogs, the Uruk-hai version.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, Pelennor from Image Magazine. Yeah, okay. I'm gonna add both of those in. What kind of kingdom would you want to be a part of? Would you want to be a part of a merchant's kingdom, a wizard kingdom? Would you want to be part of a religious group or an ambitious guy trying to retake the Iron Throne? Would you want to be like maybe a more backwater, sedate little barony, or maybe something like that? Like what kind of, when you're thinking in your head of like where you'd want to be part of, are you staking a claim on a new frontier like the Chimeron or the Eight Peaks?
Are we naming domains by chance?
If you want to, you certainly could.
Oh shoot, I feel like the most interesting narratives come from trade because it gives you reasons to invest in your neighbors, reasons to take interest in like what's going on outside the immediate realm of your kingdom. I think there's a lot of compelling structure that comes from that. I hmm my
Money
little city building brain's activating.
Many Justice says Samilla sounds like a domain name anyway.
Aw, shucks, I'm honored.
Yeah, there are merchant kingdoms. Cariel and Selenia are both places that have a lot of trade going on. Avon and DK could probably point out a few more. The Brector, again, like the Hanseatic League influenced areas, chock full of merchants and merchant princes and trading caravels and stuff like that. Creating a long one of the big deals for domain management is actually coming up with a sea trade route, because sea trade routes can offer the most value because they can do all the exotic goods from places that haven't yet been discovered or fully explored. And again, there's lots of places that haven't been fully explored or discovered. There's a spot on the map called the Dragon Isles. We know hardly anything about them. And yet my eye is always drawn to those spots on the map. Birthright is one of those games where you just put a map on the wall and look at it, and there's 8 billion story ideas that just pop into my head from looking at it.
Yeah, I can see why. Like, there's so much you can do here. Like, I'd want to build out mercantile relationships and sponsor the crafting of magic items, the development of like research in different spheres of magic. Like, it's cool. It's cool. It's cool.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that's missing is any kind of large group of magi or arcane collective. There's a few places where there's like multiple wizards that have joined together to rule a realm, but it's very, very rare. Again, wizards are rare, and high level wizards are even rarer. But I like the idea of, having Gandalf or Radagast or Saruman style characters in the world. Wizards that are so powerful that they're terrifying just on their own because they can wreck an entire army with battle spells or make your realm rain with gold. There's literally a spell called Gold Rush for your realm that will make trade like super good. Like all your taxation goes way up. So wizards can be like really important, really valuable. So can clerics, but typically to a lesser degree. Clerics are about they're more about like keeping people happy, managing morale, managing the control of your realm. Like you can actually turn the temples over to basically law enforcement if you really want to.
I see.
Not always a great idea, depending on the god, depending on the church, because again, the churches have their own inner problems.
Well, I'd love to hear more about like the kind of magic you can do with Regency too, like what you can do for your domain.
Okay.
Because I know there are some spells that affect the more ephemeral, kind of like high-minded things. Like, what's the deal? What's the deal?
So, yeah, realm magic and birthright. I'm going to focus on the arcane side of it as well as the divine. If I remember right, the divine side could actually, like, as a priest, you could actually put a mark on anyone who wasn't a member of the church with a realm magic. You could basically, like, literally create a tattoo or a sigil on someone's body to be like, you are an unbeliever, which is kind of wild.
I see.
You had to have access to ley lines on the arcane side. Ley lines were your holding as a wizard. This is what made you a regent rather than just an adventurer, is to control a ley line. Ley lines allowed you to expand your magic through any region that was connected to your ley lines had the ability to move your magic into it. So if you had your wizard's tower in one part of the realm and a ley line that existed in another very far away part of the realm, you could still cast realm magic there. And
okay.
They function within specific provinces. They operate on domain turn timescale, so durations are in months. Okay, that's how long they last. Unless they're instantaneous. They last for like months. One of my favorites is called warding. Warding is something that a wizard could do where he would basically create impenetrable walls of fog to cut off a region from all outside interference. Unless you were able to dispel the realm magic itself, which again, that's requires you to be a wizard of a very high level and have access to this ability. No one got in or out except who you decided.
Okay, so that's useful.
It's also a great way to cut off an enemy army from its supply lines and then wipe them out bit by bit.
A little bit Art of War here.
Yeah,
I know the mass combat rules. You said people weren't like using them a ton, but it's cool to have that as a narrative beat if you're doing realm size things.
Yeah. Okay. So, funnily enough, when I was running Birthright back in the 90s, what we wanted to do for mass combat, because the mass combat rules were just kind of like cards and dice and like a single D20. It wasn't great. Vonnie DK can chime in and tell me what his experience was like, but I did not care for it. And instead, what we were constantly talking about doing, although we just didn't have the gumption to actually do it, was play it out in Warhammer. We were gonna say, okay, this unit of knights actually represents all of the knights on the battlefield, and this unit of archers is all the archers on the battlefield. And we just kind of abstract it down to the level of if you kill an archer in my unit in Warhammer, that's like 50 guys.
That makes so much sense. Just like use an actual war game for the war gaming,
right? And of course the problem was the miniatures. We just couldn't get ourselves. We couldn't motivate ourselves to paint all of the minis that would be required for that size of game. I'd love to get Rich Baker on the show to talk about Birthright. Him or Ed Stark, both of whom are friends of mine. Colin McComb would also be a great guy to bring in and talk about it, because these architects of the setting they devise a lot of stories and a lot of tales that some of them never got fully recognized. I did say there was a novel I wanted to come back to, if you remember early in the episode.
Uh-huh.
Rich Baker wrote a novel. God, I'm trying to remember. He wrote a novel for Birthright that ended up getting published in the Forgotten Realms instead. I want to say it was City of Ravens. Because it involved the Shadow World. Like, it was very deep into the Shadow World, which he had to tweak and adjust for the Forgotten Realms to make it the demi-plane of Shadow. But not for nothing, Rich Baker is one of the architects of the 3rd edition change to the Forgotten Realms that introduced a whole plane of Shadow. If you remember that was a big beat for the Forgotten Realms. All these guys emerging from the Shadow, from the plane of Shadow, if you recall. Like, that's where the Netheril cities had been. So there's a narrative through line. Yeah, Shadowstone. Thank you, Vonnie DK. That's the name of the novel, Shadowstone. So if you go read Shadowstone, it's not City of Ravens, it's Shadowstone. That is a Birthright novel that was adapted to fit the Forgotten Realms.
I'm intrigued. Fuck, I want to play this now. There's a lot of room. There's a lot of room here. I see it.
If only TSR could put me in a box. Every one of these boxes has a little Ross inside of it telling you how awesome the setting is. They can stole the shit out of it.
Well, they make those little desktop Hatsune Mikus. We like a holographic Ross Watson and ramble about Birthright.
Just listen to me talk about how cool it is.
Hey, new Gen Con product. Imagine. Next year.
We'll
have mini Ross.
There you go. Other versions of Roll Magic, you could actually teleport your troops from one province to another. Entire units of troops. Units of troops are usually around 50 guys. Sometimes less. If they were like a cavalry troop or a unit of knights, it might be more like 25 or 20. There was one called Legion of the Dead, which was your necromancer. I want an army of skeletons. Realm Magic could do that. Realm Magic could literally do that. And there was one called Raze. R-A-Z-E. Raze. Now, what did Raze do? Well, this is when you absolutely positively need to demolish a castle overnight. Raze is one of those instantaneous spells where you spend 10 Regency, 2 gold bars per level of the castle you're attacking. Gold bar is roughly 2,000 gold pieces, FYI. So around 4,000 gold and 10 Regency points. And you can burn an enemy castle to the ground, wiping out defensive fortifications. This is normally what you would, take siege equipment to destroy. The most powerful named wizards in the setting, including the Gorgon, love to do this. They love to just be like, hey, you'd be outside, you'd be like, okay, well, we're on the border, we got our fortress here. What's he gonna do? There's nobody in sight. And all of a sudden, the clouds above your keep start to form into these massive thunderheads, and then huge lightning bolts come crashing down. A dozen of them, one after the other, and then with a massive thunderclap, the earth starts to rumble and shake, splitting apart as the very stones themselves shatter, and your tower comes crumbling down to the ground. And you're like, God damn it, that's realm magic. Then,
that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Domain expansion is what Stephen Lucas is thinking of with all these talk of domains. I mean, conquering other realms is definitely part of it. Declaring war, mustering your troops. By the way, don't fight in winter, because that's a bad time for most people to do it. Avani says, the combat system was weird. Each unit had a card. When it took damage, you turned it to indicate that it had taken damage. It had a reduced attack. Yeah, it's like tapping a card in Magic, in some weird ways. And hey, Mad Korenik, thank you for joining us, Mad Korenik. He's got a crown for an avatar, which is very appropriate to what we're talking about.
Thematic. That's thematic.
He says there was a fan-made update of Birthright to 5th edition that functioned pretty well. That does exist. Birthright.net. If you want to go see it, go check that out. The good people over there have been working on Birthright for a very long time. They don't always agree, and trying to construct a rulebook by committee is a huge pain in the ass. It's one of the reasons why I no longer work on it. But it was a good time, and those are good people who very, very, very badly believe in the setting. They believe in it very strongly. Oh my gosh. So yeah, that's what else would you like to know more about? Would you like to know more about the divine realm magic, or how battle magic works, or more about the Unshalian, or more about the bloodlines, like what bloodlines exist and what kind of powers you get out of them?
What are the bloodlines like? How about like that into what their realm magic does? Like I think there's a thematic tie there, and I'm curious.
So the bloodlines all were related to the dead gods.
Right.
So you'd have a bloodline related to one of the gods that no longer exists, and that sometimes their portfolio has been absorbed by someone else, and sometimes it is changed or different. Oh, sorry. Exiled One's asking how many people can cast realm magic. Only people who have bloodlines, or if you're elves or half elven. That's the requirements. You have to have a bloodline to cast realm magic, or be an elf. Just be an elf. So the 7 bloodlines, each one traces back to the dead gods. They are dun. Oh my gosh, I don't have the list. I did. So one of the ones I was talking about earlier was the bloodline of Ruornil. I have a really hard time saying this name. Ruornil. Rorinil was his totemic animal was the owl. He was the god of the moon and magic. This was the god that I had a bloodline for my very first character.
Very cool.
Sorry, I'm wrong. Rorinil is actually one of the new gods. The old god was Vorin, Vorynn. I apologize. Now, fun fact is that Vorin was the patron god of the Vosgard before Deismar, before their corruption by Azrai. Before they were corrupted by the god of evil, the Vos people, the mad Russians, they were the ones who were deep into magic and mysticism and the occult. And that's actually kind of a neat story beat. Very rarely do people ever go up to Vosgard. I kind of wish people did more often. There's a lot of crossover with the Elder Scrolls here. Like I can definitely talk about like how these things kind of mimic some stuff you'll see in the Elder Scrolls. Yeah, Rorinil the Rural Juror says Spitfire. Thank you for that tongue twister.
Rorinil the Rural
Juror, yes, thank you. Rainier. This was the former patron god of the Riuric people. He was god of the hunt and nature. If you had the bloodline of Rainier, you might have like really strong senses. You could probably track by scent. You might be able to, do Wolverine stuff.
Cool.
You might have a bond with the animals of the land. Kind of like a Ranger Light, if you want to, like layer it over whatever else you are doing. Masela, he was the goddess of the sea. So, sea stuff where you could swim, you could breathe underwater, you could potentially like speak with fishes. Basaya was the patron goddess of the Kanasi. She was the goddess of light and reason. She was, of course, replaced by Ivani, which is Ivani DK's favorite guy. But Basaya, I remember knowledge and fire were like a big thing with her. Like she could have you basically had heat vision as one of your abilities with Basaya. Like if you had the bloodline of her strong enough, you could light things on fire by looking at it. Brenna, she was the goddess of commerce and fortune. She was her totem animal was the cat. So cunning and stealth. She was kind of the roguish merchant type bloodline. So if you had a lot of luck, if you had the ability to balance on things or walk silently as a cat, that might be the bloodline of Brenna. Endurius, she was the patron god of the Enwerians. He was embodied law and justice. He was totem animal was the lion. So his scions tend to radiate authority and heroism, but they can also become domineering tyrants, which is also true of Halen, which is the god that took over from Endurius.
Yeah, like how much influence does this have on your personality as you gain power?
Well, in the books, it doesn't. This is back in the 90s, and this was not really a time for TSR to do a lot of storytelling and mechanics. You know what I mean? It was more of a descriptor that you applied to yourself and say, how does it? What I decide what that means for me. I think in a revival, the bloodline having a more stronger touch on what kind of character you are would be fun.
Yeah, like thematically, I like the idea that as you gain more divinity, you become closer to this source of your power, right? Like that should be a tension point.
Well, one of the mysteries in the setting is, can you gather enough of the deceased god to bring them back?
Ooh.
Because you can strengthen a bloodline, right? So if you were to strengthen a bloodline enough, maybe get a whole bunch of scions together who all have that same bloodline, could you enact some sort of ritual or realm magic that might resurrect a dead god?
Is doing that a good thing even?
Right? Like what would it mean to have the trauma of being dead for 1,500 years? Would you return sane?
Well, what happens to you? Like you're kind of made of them. Like, uh-oh.
There's also Azrai, we mentioned before. He's the god of darkness, deception, and evil. His totem animal is the snake. And, well, if you have the bloodline of Azrai, you can usually sense evil. You can usually do things with shadow and deception. You're usually pretty good at lying, for example.
Nice.
Whereas Endurius would give you, Endurius or Rainier, one of those two would actually give you the ability to what they called a truth ear, where you could actually detect lies spoken in your presence, which is pretty cool. Yeah, I think that would be a lot of fun, would be to rework the bloodlines to have more storytelling mechanics, to have more impact on decisions, or at least create narrative prompts. I think, for you to do things where you could even potentially turn into something like, if you remember Wraith the Oblivion from the White Wolf days.
Yeah.
You remember how another player would be your shadow, right? They would constantly be the ones who were responsible for tempting you with your dark side. Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
What if you did something like that, where you basically as a player, you would pick another player at the table and say, okay, you are my bloodline, and I want you to whisper to me. I want you to whisper to me things that are appropriate to that bloodline and push me in certain directions.
Yeah, there's a school of play kind of like this in Eclipse Phase, where you have like your little AI assistant in your head, and you can have like other players at the table live that out. I do like this. It's good structurally for like small tables, especially because it gives people something to do. It lets you have an in for the people's characters. It takes a lot of trust, but very fun.
Yeah, it would take a lot of trust. It was actually the single coolest thing about Wraith that I liked, was that idea of the shadow. and how players would be the ones responsible for it. Because frankly, the game master has a lot on their minds, and it's very easy to forget about specific character bits like your bloodlines. So taking some of that burden away from the game master and allowing other players to embody it, yeah, that's pretty rad. That's pretty rad. You could even, you know what you could do is you could even tie it into a mechanic where maybe the bloodline has a point of inspiration that it can offer you. It's like, do this thing and you will gain inspiration.
Meta points. I do like those. And it makes sense they tie to your source of divinity, right? Like that is what makes you kind of a special creature. Like, of course, that would be your source of meta defying greatness, right?
Yeah, this was another thing that made, I think, Birthright maybe stand out a little in the wrong way, is that if you wanted to play Birthright and you weren't a Blooded Scion, you probably felt like you were a chump. Because everybody who was a Blooded Scion had all these cool abilities and had the option to rule a realm, and their bloodline could get stronger. And then, like, there was a lot of story beats around the bloodline, but that wasn't like it. It was not as central to the play as I would have hoped. I kind of feel like you need to be a Blooded Scion. You need to have a bloodline.
Maybe just be a god power then, huh? Why don't you have like a divinity in you, huh? Nerd.
Yeah.
What's wrong with you?
Yes, the virgin commoners versus the Chad bloodline guys. I don't know. It certainly could create bad feelings at the table if you had people who were blooded and people who were not blooded. I would recommend, if you're going to run Birthright, it's either all Jedi or no Jedi. Everybody's blooded or nobody.
I've heard this song before.
Do you agree? Do you think that would be the way you would probably approach it?
Well, yeah, like the only alternative structure I see is specifically having one blooded guy, and then like it's about like how they're dealing with that, which could work, but then they're like the central character in some ways, which can be effective. Like you need to like really carefully pattern around that. It could be interesting, but you would need like a narrative about it maybe not being a good thing for that to work, I think.
About, I'm sorry, what do you mean?
Sorry. You could run a campaign where one of the characters is blooded.
Right.
And has this spark of divinity. And then the central tension would have to be whether or not it's a good thing to be blooded in this way, to have that spark.
That would be Bloodline of Azrai would be a great way to do that. Because, you would be worried that, should I foster this bloodline? Should I gain more power, especially by killing an Unshalian? Then maybe I will also become a monster. And maybe that is a core risk right there, right?
Yeah, I feel like that would be compelling to me. I can see that as like a campaign. So
yeah, that'd be fun.
They'd be a little bit stronger, sure, but it's intriguing. I think there's like something to do there.
Well, I've been part of groups where you have that dynamic where somebody is like the knight and we are all playing his retinue, or somebody is playing like the Baroness and we are all her advisors. I've done that multiple times, and it can be super fun, especially if you've got like a new player or someone who has a lot of energy and you assign them the role of the leader.
Yeah.
Really, it could be a lot of fun to see somebody really take ownership of that and be like, oh wow, I could grow into this, My friend is bringing his teenage son to one of our Friday night games, and that strikes me now. Like I could see that as being a fun way to focus, give him an opportunity to do something he's probably never done, which is, like be in charge of a group of adults. Right? I think that'd be kind of neat. Avani DK, thank you for chiming in again. Appreciate you, buddy. He says, one thing I had an issue with when trying to start a Birthright campaign is that while bloodlines were optional in creation, why would you not? There was not a downside, at least not mechanically. It was also, rules as written, very RNG based, since bloodline strength was a dice roll. So even if everybody was blooded, you could have somebody with an 80 plus and someone with a 5 strength bloodline. That is true. That is true. That it was random, and you could have somebody with a really kick-ass bloodline and somebody with a very barely existing one.
That's rough. I'm not sure I'm thrilled by that.
Yeah, definitely an issue, a concern. A lot of games have asymmetrical strengths. I mean, we talked about Shadowrun. We talked about how the Decker, a stray bullet could basically erase his whole purpose for being there if it hits the deck and blows up all his programs. Or the rigger whose car gets stolen. Now what do I do? That's my whole character.
Just one of my complaints about system structurally is when like character creation determines so much about like overall utility. Like, it's a little rough. It's a little rough.
How would you, I mean, so my instinct would be to say everyone has a bloodline and everyone's bloodline is roughly equivalent. Like it's all at the same level, and you grow from there. Like I wouldn't even really introduce the idea of a bloodline being weakened unless that was a major story beat that the player wanted to get involved with. Maybe that's like a feat that you take where you have a weak bloodline, but it gives you all these other benefits mechanically instead. For example.
Okay.
I don't know. That's my instinct, is to level the playing field as a start and then offer options to have, stronger or weaker.
Yeah, like it's some kind of scalable thing that just makes it feel a little more fair. I don't know. Like my number one gripe with some of the Warhammer system is getting more fate points out of the gate, and this feels kind of like that, where the GM has to like make up for it later to make things balance out.
Benjamin Fraser has a great comment here. He says, random character is fun in the right context, but this stuff is a decision you make when you're scoping the campaign. Here's the thing. I put this on the list of topics to discuss, Vera. Is randomness in role-playing games in general.
I like it. That's going to be like a seminar with that.
Right, because, I mean, what I'm thinking of when you're talking about randomness in RPGs is not just your stat creation, although that is a big part we should talk about, but also things like the Wand of Wonder or the Deck of Many Things. It's stuff like the random tables you roll on in central casting to determine your background, or the life path in the Interlock games from R. Telsorian, like we covered with Cyberpunk and Cyberpunk Red. There are games that have no randomness at all. There's games that have no dice rolls, like Chronicles of Amber, for example. And we could talk about how randomness can be great and how it can be bad, how too much of it can be a good thing. Not enough of it could be a good thing. I think that'd be a really fascinating discussion.
I would surely be intrigued. I'm game. It turns into ludology fast, but I like that.
I'm glad you're interested, but don't call me Shirley. Snark. Avadi points out that to improve your bloodline strength, you take realm actions. But, and I would argue against this, Devani, is that actually makes it almost makes it worse, because everybody else is taking their turn doing stuff, and you're having to spend your turn trying to catch up, right? Like it never felt like a good idea. The lower your strength, the more improvement you could get for single action. Yeah, it felt like a Band-Aid over the problem, Avani, because it was then an opportunity cost that nobody else had to pay, only you. Mm-hmm. But this is how it worked. He's correct. So I think. Oh wait, super chat, Ricky Chapman, boom, coming in with us another super chat. He says, we kind of want to play a mage who's actually descended from one of the legendary monsters, and the dreaded ancestry could bring great challenge.
That's fun. I'm a sucker for this kind of narrative beat where you've got like some inner nature you got to resist, or perhaps cater to or work with alongside. It's cool, and you're allowed to in this setting.
Well, what I could do is I could briefly talk about some of the Birthright games I've been in.
Please,
one of my favorites was a game where there's an Unsh alien called the Banshee. All right. And the thing about the Banshee is that she's like a normal person during the day, and at night she becomes this horrifying dream monster that like destroys your memories in your sleep.
Okay.
And the game master started out this campaign, and it was basically the Hangover D&D edition, because we all started the game with zero memories of who we were, standing in a cave, surrounded by dead bodies, and we had to piece it together that we had somehow put together this expedition to fight the Banshee and lost.
Nice.
the core conflict in what this was all about was discovering the difference between who we are and who we were. Because, as a brand new character, I had this idea of what the person I wanted to be, but then I started discovering who I had been in the past. I was like, I don't like that guy. I don't like that guy at all. And it was super fun. Had a great time with that one. That's a good example of how you could take a single one of the Unshalian and turn them into a great plot device. Another campaign that I ran, like I said, was the one where the adventurers were all basically tasked with cleaning out the lawless peaks of the Chimeron. They had to destroy the Chimera. They had to take it over and turn it into some sort of prospering, or hopefully, ideally, a prosperous, thriving realm, all with the pressure of the fact that their initial sponsor would be more than happy to move in and take over if they failed. So that was a lot of fun as well.
That's pretty strong.
Super chat from Bunny DK coming in with a steel chat. It's after midnight here in Denmark. I have to head to bed, but here's a little something as thanks for covering one of my favorite settings. Scarred Lands next, please. I'll make sure it's on the list. I do love the Scarred Lands. Are you familiar with Scarred Lands?
I am not, but thank you so much, Ivani. This has been a pretty cool time. Like, I knew I was interested in Birthright. I feel like I've learned a lot for sure. I did like some reading prior, but Ross is good taste. We know this. So do you, apparently.
In some circles, I am considered a man of culture.
A knower. One who knows.
Yes. I am a knower of things on the internet. So why don't you talk about your final thoughts on Birthright while I put mine together, and then we will talk about some other things that are upcoming for the channel and some other things that are happening. Actually, really quick, Aeromob's asking how the bloodlines start. Early in the episode, we talked about this. There was a massive battle at a place called Deismar where the god of evil led his hordes against the forces of good, including the gods, and the gods sacrificed themselves to destroy Azrai, the god of evil. And when this happened, all of their divine essence rained down upon the battlefield, and those who were closest to the center became the new gods, while those further out gained the divine essence in their bloodline and was able to be passed down in their lineage. It also gave them a mystical connection to the land, so that they became the best and true rulers are the ones with the divine rights to rule. That's how the bloodline started.
The so-called mandate of heaven.
Yeah, but in D&D form.
Who doesn't love the mandate of heaven? Come on.
All right, well, you're going to have to explain that probably for some of our listeners.
Oh, yeah. So the mandate of heaven is this concept that was popular. I forget what dynasty it started, but it's part of like the imperial sect in China, which is the idea that the mandate of heaven is yours to be the ruler. The heavens align and want you to give structure to the lands below. So it is not only the God-given right, it is the God-given duty to reign responsibly. And if you fall out of favor, clearly you've lost the mandate of heaven. So it's very convenient like that. I'm sure we'll talk about this more, talking about like Exalted or like Wuinbon or something like that.
Aeromob says you can just do that again, whatever, right? No, that was a cataclysmic event. It will not ever happen again.
No running it back.
Oh man. Well, I mean, the consequences of a second Deismar, I mean, that is another plot thread you could follow, is like what it would mean to do it again. You know, what if we had the final battle of the gods part 2, Electric Boogaloo? Could we spread? Actually, that may be a way to do the revival. Is there was a second Deismar, but it in this case it just evened out the bloodlines as opposed to randomly assigning them in ways. I don't know.
We're hearkening back to to the meta plot discussion again now.
Yes. All right, you want to hear my final thoughts?
Please, yes, please.
Get ready. Settle in. Papa Ross is going to go off again. In my opinion, Birthright deserves to be remembered as one of the most genuinely inventive and awesome things that TSR ever created. It refused to be just another sword and sorcery sandbox. From the moment you roll up a character, you're not just a wandering adventurer. You are possibly the scion of a dead god. Maybe you carried the spark of divinity passed down since heroes bled into existence at the Battle of Deasmar. Maybe you are not. Maybe you are an adventurer, somebody aspires to become that warrior king. And that premise can change everything. Your class can determine how your kingdom generates power, how strong your magic can get, whether you can wield realm magic or not. Your personal safety is tied into the terrifying fact that anyone who kills you can potentially steal your bloodline, as well as the idea that if you kill a monster that's steeped in the bloodline of evil, that could corrupt your own. So the stakes are high. It's D&D dressed up as Game of Thrones and Dune, and it did it years before either one of them was a cultural icon, even though it is, again, very contemporary with Game of Thrones. Like suspiciously contemporary. What I love most about Birthright is how it's all interconnected. The political, the religious, the economic, the magic. The idea that you can have these political intrigues and the court scheming, as well as going out and just doing D&D stuff to learn about why these kingdoms should be important to you in the first place. And then there's the Unshalian. There's the Gorgon, Rove Manslayer, the Basilisk. These are genuinely mythic monsters. Not only monsters, they're rulers of their own realms in many cases. And they have real histories, real ambitions. They're not just a stat block waiting in a dungeon. They are an epic piece of your story when you face them down. They feel like Tolkien style enemies. They feel like Saruman or the Balrog. They feel like right up there. Even the dragons that are rare and ancient and nearly extinct, they feel like the last living memory of a world that's older than anyone even knows. Even the elves who've been around for thousands of years, it's older than them. It's part of a world that lives in antiquity, in legend. But despite all of this ambition, Birthright just vanished. It launched in 1995 during the free fall of TSR's finances. It got only a handful of supplements, and even those supplements are kind of small. And then support dried up. It didn't survive the transition into 3rd edition like Forgotten Realms or Dragonlance did. There are a lot of veteran D&D players like myself, guys with decades in this hobby, and they will straight up tell you they've probably never seen anyone run it at the table. At a video game by Sierra, which I think that's great. I mean, again, if you're a man of a certain age, you're like, oh my God, Sierra, I remember them. It tried to bring the setting to a wider audience, but stumbled trying to put together all these things into one package. And God, Crusader Kings would be amazing if they could do a version of it today. So Birthright became kind of that quintessential cult classic setting. It's beloved by the people who found it, but it's invisible to everyone else. It's one of the reasons why I'm so excited to bring this out on Lorebeards and Roleplaying and maybe expose it to a new audience. Maybe you out there, Jeff, I see you. Maybe you are listening to this right now thinking, this sounds really cool. I should learn more about it. And if that's true, then I've done my job.
It's pretty freaking cool, Ross.
Well, I love it. And I hope you can feel that because, cult status isn't the same as dead. Birthright has refused to disappear thanks to the guys at birthright.net and their antics, their ongoing builds of 5th edition stuff. There's an active fan community. There's a trickle of YouTubes, deep dives, let's reads. Every so often you'll see a thread pop up on RPGNet or something like that saying, what would 5th edition Birthright look like? EN World has this come up if you're familiar with EN World. It's another forum site that we should probably talk about at some point when we cover like the big forums of D&D or role-playing games in general. So there's an appetite, and there's an appetite for an official return, and that appetite has not gone away. People are still hungry for it. Even if Wizards of the Coast never pulls that trigger, and by God, it sure looks like they don't want to. So where does that leave us? I mean, I think Birthright's future is exactly what its past has been. Not a corporate revival, but held in the hearts of the fans. And I'd love to be wrong. Give me a proper 5e or 5.5e treatment. Give me bloodlines. Give me blood theft. Give me realm magic. Give me the Unshalian. Give me the elves that do the hunt of the elves. Give me that wild hunt aspect. I love that stuff.
Big fan.
So But even if that never happens, I think Birthright has proven it doesn't need that to survive because the ideas are just too good to let die. That's a legacy worth talking about on Lorebeards and Roleplaying, and it's worth trying to run yourself if anything we said here resonates with you. That's my final thoughts.
Yeah, like I'm compelled, man. I have really been intrigued by this. Your passion's obvious. I get it. I see the vision.
Boom!
No, it's such a pleasure to learn about a setting that I've heard of in passing and always this like inkling of interest in it. It hits a lot of notes that I think are really valuable at the table. There's a lot there that I truly enjoy. It's just such a cool thing, man. It's like part of what's such a cool adventure with this show is getting to like really dive into things that I've had peripheral knowledge of and been curious about, and just, oh man.
There's really great stuff in Birthright, and again, like just look at the map and think about all the stories that you could do that from the map. Forgotten Realms does this for me too. So does Mystara, but there's just something special about Birthright and the way it handled it. Hey, we've got a super chat from Stephen Lucas. Do you want to read this one?
Yeah, Stephen Lucas can see some Planescape characters. Somebody the one got the domain of evil.
Azrai was the god of evil, also deception and darkness. So not just evil, but like mostly evil, like the core Venn diagram of evil. Yeah, he basically got that.
I see it though. That's a heck of a domain. There's a perhaps some room for high-minded debate.
Well, I mean, to me, that's the setting Sauron. He is literally the god of evil. He is all things bad and wrong, and that works really well for Tolkien, and it works really well for Birthright. Now, I don't know how Game of Thrones like worked out the whole thing. I think it's far more morally gray over there as far as the antagonists and the White King and all that stuff. But I do feel like there's a lot of resonance between those two, as we've established. All right. So Vera, what else would you like to discuss? You want to talk about some cool, fun things we're going to talk about in the future, or stuff that you're doing in the future? I know you got a big collab coming up.
Yeah, I've got an exciting VTubery collab thing tomorrow. I'm playing the Big Walk with some friends, and it's going to be a a big old stream. So,
where can people find you to do this awesome collaboration?
I am Vera Similla on Twitch and like all platforms. If you follow me, you probably will see me in your Twitch list tomorrow because that's going to be a whole thing.
I forgot to ask. You were at Offkai.
I was, yeah.
Did anybody talk to you about our show at Offkai?
Yeah, people were pretty stoked, man. Believe it or not, VTubers do enjoy tabletop role-playing games and RPGs in general. It was a lot of fun. I saw Sotek, of course, who is very sick right now. I'm less sick. I was a little sniffly. My tea has revived me. I don't have COVID, which is awesome.
Well, what did people? I mean, what vibe did you get from people who enjoy Lorebeards and Roleplaying? Because I love it when I get to meet people who listen to us and talk about our stuff. So,
well, yeah, like coming from the VTuber sphere, people are pleasantly surprised to see like VTubing happening in a zone where it's like a little bit professional, almost. Where well, because this is like a big part of my professional this is like what I like to do. I like to talk about tabletop games. I like to talk about art, about ludology, and it is cool, people. The vibe is that it's cool that we do this show and that we're talking to folks who are like in the scene. It's pretty nice. It's pretty nice.
Oh, so they want more interviews with people like Mike Mason and
yeah.
Okay.
So it's like a cool thing to do.
Well, we should do that. We should probably start making a list of people we want to reach out to. I know we've been trying to get the guys from Lancer, the guys from Alcat. I've been trying to get a hold of the guys from Eclipse Phase. If anybody out there knows Eclipse Phase people, tell them to get in touch with me because we'd love to have them on the show. Tim Brown is the one we've talked about bringing on to talk about Dark Sun. I know we want to try and get what are some other people you think you'd like to reach out to try and get on the show?
I have to like reach out to Alcat. We were talking and we were like figuring out dates, and we have yet to decide. We have the time, but not the date. Man, I'd like to talk to the Pokeroll devs still.
Yes.
We talked about that. We were maybe getting a little Glee Monster on at some point. We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. I want to do like more conceptual stuff too, because it's just fun to like be on there. Like I think it's a neat vibe that we get to do this stuff, and it's a crossover from the VTubing world into sort of the professional sphere of RPGs. That's something I take a lot of pride in. So.
Well, I could invite some small press guys on too. My good friend Mike Lafferty, who runs Fainting Goat Press, would be a good one to bring on. Talk about the smaller side of the industry. My friend Bill Keys could come on and talk about how he's doing a lot of stuff in the indie side of superhero gaming, which I also need to tell you guys about his Kickstarter, by the way, because it's pretty awesome. He's doing a Kickstarter for a project called Glimmers of Darkness, which is a book of supervillains. And hey, it's kickstarting, and hey, they've already hit a stretch goal where I'm writing an adventure for it, guys.
Whoa, very cool.
So yeah, there's that. Just to say,
can you plug the link for that by any chance? Can you give us?
Yeah, I sure can.
Yeah.
In fact, let's see here. So this is the code for Harmless Horse Creatures games. That's the page on drive-through. But the actual factual Kickstarter link, I'm going to take a second to grab because there is also an image I need to show. Let's see here. Where is it? Computer, why are you doing this to me? Okay, here here it is. I've got the ad up so I can put this on the screen. In just a second, I've got to do some bits and bobs here. I am a professional. I do this for a living. There it is. Glimmers of Darkness. 30 terrifying new supervillains. tinyurl.com/glimmers of darkness will take you to it. And it started just a couple days ago, and it's already funded. So, please go check it out. And if you want to see an adventure I wrote for it, I am actually a part of this.
Let's go, Ross.
Yeah, so Bill is the guy who does this stuff. We should bring him on to talk about these things as well. I do have on the list talking about things like randomness in RPGs and introducing new people to role-playing games. I know you wanted to discuss, now I'm forgetting, now that I'm talking about it.
Styles of play?
This is, styles of play, thank you. That's why I have a list. I write it down, because otherwise I forget.
Wow,
Mega Dungeons. Mega Dungeons would be fun to talk about. Adventure paths in general. We've been asked to talk about Ghost Walk, which I don't know much about, so that'd be a lot of fun. Which I believe is a afterlife. It's a way to play like characters that have already died in D&D.
I recall this coming up when we were talking about character death.
Right, in the TPK episode, we did that.
Yeah.
Let's see, styles of play like Mohawks and Mirror Shades and Murder Hobos.
Yeah.
All the M's. And I can always do a deep dive on the games I've designed. We could talk about Torg Eternity or Wrath and Glory or, Rogue Trader if we want to.
Yeah, we've not covered Rogue Trader or Wrath and Glory. Rogue Trader we could talk about. Let's get the Outcat guys on. I'll follow up. We were back and forth, and then
one of my favorite things to discuss is actually what I call group alchemy. And I call it alchemy because it is kind of a form of magic. It's difficult to fully explain all the sociological aspects that are in play when you form a good gaming group and how you hold that together and why group alchemy is so important. Because if you have a group of people that you're gaming with that are friends and they riff off each other and they're active and engaged, and not on their phones and not falling asleep at the table, that's important. That's a big deal.
I would agree. I think there's a lot we can unpack there.
And then we can talk about some of the infamous or famous RPGs. Do you recall the Last Unicorn Dune RPG?
No.
That's a heck of a story, because it was a Gen Con release and then it was gone, and it became an instant collector's edition and eBay princess for a long time. Speaking of princesses, there's Palace of the Silver Princess, which is infamous for having a lot of bare breasts drawn into it.
Wow.
Into its artwork, back in the 80s, when it was not normal to see softcore porn in your role-playing game.
As opposed to now.
Well, it's still not normal unless you're, I guess, unless you're like certain games, I guess, like Fatal, for example.
Oh, are we calling that normal now? Is like that?
Oh, I sure hope not. Dear Lord. You guys, if you want to see us talk about some of the craziest and weirdest and like, please don't ever play this role-playing games, go check out our Cursed RPGs episode. Vera and I are still planning to do an episode where we play through Empire Satanis. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm hoping to do that this month. Well, we need to pick a date. We need to figure out who's going to be doing that with us from the team. I know Sotek wanted to, but it's horribly ill right now. But
him and Andy are both like trying to find a time when Sotek and Andy are not sick, super busy, or off, off away doing stuff. It's very difficult. Those guys are very busy. We'll have to see if we can figure it out.
I am excited for that, though. I've got my principal work done. It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be fun.
All right. Well, I think that's about it for this episode of Lorebeards Role-Playing. We do Lorebeards Roleplay every Monday from 2 to 5 p.m. And if you've enjoyed us talking about Birthright, which is such a great setting, and you want to see us talk about more, do us a favor, hit that like button and the subscribe button so the algorithm can spread us out, and even more people can become aware of our little show where we just talk about tabletop. Oh, wait. Ivani DK, he's back. He says, why would you do this? You've drawn me back from my bed. Would you do an episode on the open gaming license era of RPGs, and if it has been a boon or not for the hobby? Also, Fatal is not an RPG, it is a blight on humanity. The OGL is something we absolutely should discuss. That's a great one.
Yeah, interesting. We could talk about that, yeah.
I come down on the side that it was a boon, that it was a good thing overall. But we should certainly talk about the ways it was not.
We'll discuss. I'm intrigued.
The OGL era is actually when I started my professional work on role-playing games.
Yeah,
I got into the industry writing in 2000 when the OGL was launched, and it created a whole new cottage industry of little indie companies. There was a little indie company in Louisville, Kentucky, that was called Citizen Games, and they were making products for 3rd edition D&D and adventures and stuff, and I got brought in to be the line editor for that. I got to work with a lot of cool people, and we made some fun books. I'm not like super proud of the stuff we made back then because it was part of, a lot of quantity over quality type approach. But I learned a lot, and that's where I just got started as a young sprout, barely 25 years old at the time. My God, where does the time go? Avani DK, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate having another Birthright fanatic join us here. And I know you, at least if no one else, fully appreciated all the crazy details we dropped on you today. Avani DK did.
Yeah, thank you so much. This has been really cool. I really enjoyed this. It's always fun to learn about a neat setting. And I've been curious about Birthright for all you've spoken highly of it. I understand why now.
Oh, the short version on Scarred Lands. You will probably appreciate this. White Wolf did a 3rd edition campaign setting for Dungeons & Dragons, and they did it in a typical White Wolf style. It's got a very storytellery approach to the setting with a lot of really great factions and ideas and stuff built in, but it's also very dark. It's a world where the Titans devoured the gods, and then the gods fought back. And it's called the Scarred Lands because the Titans were cast down onto the earth and bound and just either bound or destroyed or torn apart, and like they're the remnants of the Titans scattered across the world creates all the tension and all the monsters and all the conflicts. So yeah, Ivani DK says it this way: basically post-apocalypse after the war between the Titans and the gods, very dark, with the elven god killed so definitively they cannot remember his name. That's an awesome. There's an awesome book series about this by Richard Lee Byers. First book is called Forsaken, and it's a trilogy, and it's actually really good. If you like the Scarred Lands, highly recommend you go read that. And last minute super chat from Necromancer Kobold. He says, "I'm now on my way to Birthright to preform the perfect time-tested form of diplomacy called showing up with 500 skeletons and recycled bodies."
Excellent.
Avani DK says he has those novels. Okay, great. You guys, this has been wonderful. We will see you again on next Monday, assuming everything goes well. Right after the show goes live, right after the show ends, I should say, there will be a poll up for next week's episode. So you guys can go vote, go to the YouTube page for Lorebeards and click on the posts tab, and then you can vote. It is an image poll. It shows you what the options are. Vera, I can actually tell you what the options are if you're curious, because I know you were sick and I kind of put this together for you. Let's
Thank you.
see.
I know it might be on there. I'm a knower.
Well, unfortunately, I didn't put Super Babes back into rotation, but I really want to. Let's see your schedule. Yes. So randomness and role playing is one of the options. Styles of play is the other option. And the last option is the Great Pendragon campaign.
Nice.
Which I am almost as excited about that one as I am about Birthright. That is an amazing product, in case you've never heard of it. But anyway, all three of those are great topics. Please go vote and let us know which ones you would like us to cover next Monday. We'll see you later.
Yeah, bye, y'all. Thank you so much.
Cheers.
Bye now.